Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 9th, 2024 City Council meeting. Thanks, folks, for coming down this evening. And before we get started with our agenda, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We do have, we'll move right to the roll call here. And Justice Redding, I believe you are running the show in the back there, if I'm correct. Thank you very much for your help.
That's correct.
All right, welcome. Justice, when you're ready, we'll go ahead and do a roll call for attendance.
Okay, roll call for City Council, December 9th, 2024. Stacie Anderson.
Present.
Mirtha Becerra.
Present.
Bob Campbell.
Here.
Daniel Carlino.
Present.
Sierra Farmer.
Present.
Gwen Jones.
Present.
Kirsten Jordan.
Present.
Eric Melson.
Present.
Mike Nugent.
Present.
Jennifer Savage.
Present.
Amber Sherrill.
Present.
And Sandra Vasecka. Present. It appears we have everyone tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ms. Redding. All right. With that, we'll get started on item number 2, which is the approval of minutes from December 2nd, 2024. Do any council members have any questions or any changes for the minutes? Okay, not seeing any in the room here, and I'm not seeing any online. So those minutes will be submitted as, will stand as submitted. Thank you very much. The next agenda item is to approve any changes to our committee meeting agendas or membership approvals. So we've got a committee schedule for December 11th, 2024. That committee schedule is posted online on the City Council website with all of the corresponding materials. And Ms. Redding, do we have any changes to the council committee schedule this Wednesday?
No changes this evening.
Okay, excellent, great. So committee schedule remains as submitted. And then next we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is special presentations and proclamations. We don't have any neighborhood council updates this evening, and I do have a proclamation to read. And then just to give a quick outline of our evening, we do have 2 public hearings. One is to approve the phased development of Missoula Loft homes, and then the other is to hear our Missoula 2045 land use plan, which I anticipate a number of people in the audience may be here for tonight. Maybe you're here for other items as well. And then in addition, we do have a couple of items on the regular business which have to do with expanding the eligibility of our sidewalk program, and then moving forward with the right-of-way improvements on Eaton Street. And I'll just note for the record that it was by unanimous vote in terms of the ordinances amending the sidewalk, but I did ask for those items to be together during the committee report just so we could talk about them in totality together. All right. So with that, it is my pleasure to share a proclamation for Blackfoot Communications Day. And I want to start out before reading this by saying that we recognize a lot of organizations, individuals in our community, and different efforts that are notable to benefit our community. And businesses that have been serving our community for decades stand out as those that have helped build who Missoula is, employ folks that live here, and be a general steward of our community. And that is Blackfoot Communications. So it's my pleasure to read this proclamation today. Whereas Blackfoot Communications, a Missoula-based technology provider, is celebrating 70 years of connecting people, businesses, and communities. And whereas Blackfoot, named after the Blackfoot River, began in 1954 as a cooperative to provide voice service to people living in rural areas around Missoula. And whereas Blackfoot held its first annual meeting at the Palace Hotel in Missoula in the summer of 1954. And whereas Blackfoot has grown and is today delivering state-of-the-art fiber-based broadband internet managed services and other technology solutions to homes, small and large businesses, and entire communities. And whereas Blackfoot Communications has remained steadfast in its mission to keep people, communities, and businesses connected and looks forward to providing advanced technology services for another 70 years and beyond. Now, therefore, I, Andrea Davis, Mayor of the City of Missoula in the state of Montana, hereby recognize the 12th day of December, 2024 as Blackfoot Communications Day. We are joined by some folks from Blackfoot Communications, including Mr. John Teague, whose grandfather started this cooperative many years ago. And it's a cooperative, of course, is a corporation owned by its shareholders. And so this is something that is longstanding in our community. And thank you for your continued service. Appreciate you being here tonight. You're welcome, you bet. Okay. They did not wish to comment this evening, so we're not having any comments at the microphone. All right. And Ms. Dantic, thank you for all of your outreach and work that you've done. I'll look forward to catching up with you soon. All right. All right. So now we'll move into our public hearings. And so our first public hearing is 5.1, which is Missoula Loft Homes Subdivision Phases 1 through 3. And Alex Bramlett is online to provide the staff report.
Wonderful, thank you. Can you see the screen and hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So good evening. My name is Alex Bramlett, and I'm a planner with Development Services, here to present the phase development review of Missoula Loft Homes on Mary Jane Boulevard Subdivision, phases 1 through 3. The Missoula Loft Homes on Mary Jane Boulevard subdivision is located north of Mullen Road, east of Flynn Lane, and consists of 54 lots on 16.74 acres. Here's a full view of the subdivision plan showing all 6 phases. The development review at this time is for phases 1 shown in blue, phase 2 shown in yellow, and phase 3 shown in green. No changes are proposed to the phasing plan or the final plat submittal deadlines. Here's the proposed plat for phases 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1 on the east side includes a large 3.2 acre park north of and adjacent to O'Leary Street and 26 lots located off Geary Lane, Flanagan Lane, and Killarney Way. Phase 2 in the northwest corner includes 2 lots off Flanagan Lane, and phase 3 includes 3 lots located on the northeast corner of Mary Jane Boulevard and O'Leary Street. At its regularly scheduled meeting on August 21st, 2023, City Council voted to approve the preliminary plat for the Missoula Loft Homes on Mary Jane Boulevard subdivision in 6 phases, subject to 17 conditions of approval. State law requires the subdivider to provide written notice to the city prior to submitting for phase for final plat review. State law also requires the governing body to determine whether any changed primary criteria impacts or new information exists that create potentially significant adverse impacts. Through phase development review of phases 1, 2, and 3, we have concluded there is no new information that would create significant impacts. There are no proposed changes to the 17 conditions of preliminary plat approval. After phase development review, the applicant may submit for final plat approval. The city subdivision regulations include review of the following impacts from a proposed subdivision derived from state law. These are the changes in the categories you will find in the staff report. Please note that there are various minor changes to the findings of fact and conclusions of law. Staff recommends a motion to approve the phase development review for phases 1 through 3 of Missoula Loft Homes on Mary Jane Boulevard subdivision, subject to the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval outlined in the staff report. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you so much.
All right. Efficient staff presentation. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. And then I will, because this, I don't believe we have any developer remarks. That is part of the project, do we, here tonight? Anybody here that's part of the subdivision
I believe
sponsor?
IMEG, Tamara Ross may be online, and I'm not sure if there's anyone in the audience.
I'm looking around the room. I don't see anybody here in the audience. Anybody representing the applicant or developer wishing to make remarks this evening as part of the staff presentation? Okay. Not seeing any, then we'll go ahead and turn this over to questions from council. Any questions from council on this? Not seeing it's pretty routine piece of business here. Okay, all right. So I'm not seeing any questions from council, and then I will ask Councilor Nugent to make the motion, and then we can open it up to public comment. How about that?
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I move City Council approve the phased development of Missoula Loft Homes on Mary Jane Boulevard, subdivision phases 1 through 3, located north of O'Leary Street and east of Mary Jane Boulevard, on track 2 of Certificate of Survey number 6817, based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law of the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Nugent. And are there any members of the public that wish to speak to this agenda item this evening? I'm not seeing any in the audience. Wish to come on up? Come on up. Will you speak to the microphone, please? Please identify your name, and we allow 3 minutes per public comment, and I'll go ahead and help you out by tracking time up here.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I received a letter from you guys because I have a property which borders the development. And I would like to know where to find detailed, documentation about the project so I can actually know what exactly is going to be built. How many stories, how densely it will be built. Can you tell me where to find these documents? Thank you.
Sir, if you'll leave your contact name with the officer in front, we'll make sure we have some staff follow up with you. You bet. All right, any other members of the public wishing to provide comment this evening? Not seeing any in the room. How about online? I'm not seeing any online either. So that wraps up our public comment. We'll bring it back for council comments. Any council comments? No? All right. Not seeing any here or online. So then we will go ahead and do a roll call vote on this item, Ms. Redding.
Voting on the motion to approve the phased development of Missoula Loft Homes on Mary Jane Boulevard, subdivision phases 1 through 3 of located north of O'Leary Street and east of Mary Jane Boulevard on track 2 of Certificate of Survey number 6817, based on the findings and fact and conclusions of law in the staff report, subject to the conditions of approval. Stacie Anderson,
Yes.
Mirtha Becerra,
Yes.
Bob Campbell,
Yes.
Daniel Carlino,
Yes.
Sierra Farmer,
Yes.
Gwen Jones,
Yes.
Kirsten Jordan,
Yes.
Eric Melson,
Yes.
Mike Nugent,
Yes.
Jennifer Savage,
Yes.
Amber Sherrill,
Yes.
Sandra Vasecka. Yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. That wraps up that agenda item, and we'll move on to 5.2, which is our Missoula 2045 land use plan. Before I turn it over to staff for their presentation, I just wanted to kick us off by saying that this is really a long time coming. The city has been working alongside community members for about 2 years to update our growth plan, now called a land use plan. That is really the big picture in terms of how we are determining through much public engagement and input the land use designations in our land use or our buildable area. That extends beyond the city limits. So the city plans for this, and we also, by mandate, plan for basically a 20-year planning horizon. This is largely dictated by state law in terms of the Montana Comprehensive Land Use Act. And this land use plan is something that the city of Missoula was on its way to update its growth policy, given all of the changes and dynamics in our community that we've really needed to respond to over the last several years. Our growth policy had last been developed in 2015. In 2023, the Montana legislature, and you'll hear this in much more detail from our skilled staff, but in 23 we did get some legislative changes that fit in with the work that we were doing as a community, and we had to make some pivots to accommodate state law changes. And largely what this plan represents is Missoula's values and ideals in a way that reflects, again, the growing changes and dynamics that we are managing as a community and as we grow together. It really reflects our landscapes, our people, our neighborhoods, and our public spaces. This land use plan, if you haven't had a chance to dig into it, it's available on Engage Missoula on the city's website, and it really is designed to make it as accessible as possible. This is all about the way in which our community is going to be built out and to accommodate the needs that we have for more attainable and accessible homes, how it is that we address our street types, where we build certain types of homes or commercial development, and really how our community flows. The shared vision for growth requires that Missoula evolve and change, and this plan helps lay out a plan just for that. The state law does require that we come back every 5 years to update this land use plan, and I can say that we'll probably be revisiting it much more earlier than that, just because we know that there's likely going to be some items that we'll want to take a look at as we continue to see the changes that will roll out from this plan. The thing that I want to emphasize here is that, Missoula, this plan is yours. There has been such a significant and vested interest by members of the community, and that includes folks with lived experience and folks that often have not engaged traditionally in this kind of planning, as well as folks that are in the development community and professionals that are often the users of land use documents. And so it's been something that I've been really proud to see the amount of work the staff has put in alongside our community partners to really help make this accessible and attainable to the community, so we can hear about shared experiences. We could learn about the circumstances in terms of, what has led to some of the land use decisions in the past and how that's led to the way our community's built out today, and then really inform decisions moving forward. So I want to emphasize again that the result of this work is a plan for all Missoulians, and our charge was to balance our shared goals of housing, equity, and climate, and connectivity, while knowing that each of us prioritizes these items differently. And this plan really charts a course into the future and demonstrates a thoughtful vision for growth, one that is backed by data and contains detailed implementation steps. And so I'm really pleased to be able to hand this over to the staff so they can walk through what is all involved in this, and we can hear not only questions from council, but then we can hear from the public that are here to share opinion and thought as well this evening. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to the staff, and Mr. Brewer, if you'll kick us off.
Well, thank you. My name is Ben Brewer. I'm a planning supervisor in the CPDI department in the Community Planning Division. And I would like to introduce our team members who are presenting tonight, along with myself. They are Emily Gluckin on my left here, a senior planner, and Madsen Matthias on my right, an associate planner, both in the Community Planning Division as well. We also have Laval Means, our Planning Division manager, with us here tonight. The process for compiling the new land use plan has involved work and input throughout the city, as well as departments and organizations beyond the city as well. And I just want to give a shout out and thanks to the many people who have contributed to putting the plan together. This is the agenda we're going to walk through tonight. We're going to give a short just introduction to the public hearing adoption process, talk about the goals and intents of the Our Missoula project and some of the statutory requirements of the new Planning Act, and then give primarily an overview of the land use plan itself, including engagement that went into developing the plan. We've also received recent comments and have some staff recommended updates for the plan that we want to introduce, and then end with some adoption considerations. So we are here tonight to hold a public hearing for City Council to consider adoption of a resolution to adopt a new land use plan referred to as the Our Missoula 2045 Land Use Plan and Place Type Map to replace the previous growth policy, the Our Missoula City Growth Policy 2035, as well as the associated future land use map. This resolution also includes carrying forward some select sub-area plans and sunsetting other outdated neighborhood plans. This updated policy document directs the city's future growth by addressing the current community vision, needs, and development challenges. Built with consistent input from the community, the plan outlines a clear, actionable vision to support sustainable, equitable growth and public well-being. Tonight is the formal public hearing to present the plan to council and the community, and to hear public comment on the plan, and for council to consider the plan and public comment, ask questions of staff, and discuss with one another. We anticipate further discussion with council at the committee meeting coming up later this week on the 11th, and hope to conclude the public hearing and reach a decision on adoption of the plan at the following council meeting on December 16th. These here are the materials associated with the hearing, and I'll take just a little time to orient you and the public to them before we proceed. First of all, there's the resolution itself to adopt the new plan, which is what you're considering the adoption of. The staff report provides the explanation and overview of the plan and lists the considerations for adoption and compliance with state law. It also includes an itemized list of what changes were made to the adoption draft of the plan following the public review period. Beyond the plan document itself, there are also a set of supporting documents that are included as appendices to the plan. Many of the appendices are materials that have already been shared out earlier in the project and should sound familiar to those who have been following this process. They include the community profile, which summarizes and analyzes existing conditions and projected trends and is mandated by the Planning Act. The Equity and Land Use Report, which evaluated existing inequities perpetuated by our existing development codes, and which is the basis for a set of 6 equity and land use principles that are foundational to the land use strategy that informs the plan. The Code Diagnostic and Community Form Analysis, both of which were developed during the second phase of the Our Missoula project and provide important guidance and basis for the plan. The Our Missoula Development Guide, and a list of additional resources that are referenced by the plan. I also want to point attention especially to Appendix F, the Community Engagement Summary, which details the extensive engagement and outreach that's occurred throughout the Our Missoula project, and which we will spend some more time in this presentation providing a more thorough overview. The agency memo is what was shared out ahead of the public review period to request agency comment on the public review draft of the plan. There's a memo summarizing the planning board public hearing in November, and a memo detailing final staff recommended changes or updates to the plan. We'll cover that a little more later in the presentation. And finally, there are a number of public comments that have been received by staff following the planning board public hearing, and those are included for your consideration as well, and will continue to be added to the referral through the public hearing process as they are received. This is a very high-level general reminder and overview. Ultimately, the goal of the Our Missoula project is to update our development codes to better align with our policies. There are a couple of key issues that we're trying to address through this project that we should name. First of all, the project was based on a recognition that the housing situation in Missoula is a crisis that affects the entire community and needs to be acted on. We simply need to find ways to allow for more housing than we currently do. Similarly, the project was born out of the recognition that the management of development and growth that has been occurring in Missoula is lacking considerations for equity and fairness for how and where growth can occur. Some neighborhoods are taking the brunt of growth and development while others are largely unaffected. And finally, our policy basis needs to be clarified, strengthened, and updated in order to support the outcomes that we want to achieve through developing new codes, which especially includes outcomes around housing, equity, connectivity, and climate resilience. This is the first major deliverable in the comprehensive project that we refer to as the Our Missoula Growth Policy Update and Code Reform. The project kicked off in the fall of 2022 with a community launch, and we've spent the time since then on defining the problem, meaning analyzing our existing conditions, determining projected trends, and evaluating misalignments between our codes and policies. And then also exploring different scenarios for the future, asking what could change look like for Missoula. These efforts have brought us to where we are now in the current phase of the project, which is to affirm our community's vision for growth through adoption of a new land use plan. As you can see from the graphic here, we're not fully through the Our Missoula process. We still have 2 remaining phases where we'll dive into the development code update and the adoption of a unified development code, which we anticipate to occur by spring of next year. The land use plan must adhere to state law, and the new land use plan must comply with a new land use legal framework adopted by the 2023 state legislature called the Land Use and Planning Act. The Planning Act was intended to overhaul Montana's Subdivision and Platting Act and change the way the larger cities across the state engage in growth planning and development review by aligning land use planning, zoning, and subdivision regulations all in one unified legal framework. It essentially sets a new baseline for land use planning and regulations. A key feature of the Planning Act is that the new law shifts how and when public participation can and should occur related to development and development review. The major shift that this brings is an emphasis on engagement during broader planning processes, such as what we're currently considering, instead of during site-specific development projects, which moving forward will be largely reviewed administratively. The Act requires that municipalities meet the new framework within 3 years from when it was written, essentially before May of 2026. We were fortunately already in motion with the Our Missoula project, and the state provided more specific parameters to allow for us. The scope of the Planning Act covers the entirety of what was originally identified in the Our Missoula project. Earlier this summer, sorry about that. Earlier this summer, we adopted the required public participation plan and transitioned the existing planning board to a planning commission to meet the requirements of the Act. We're focused now on the update to our land use plan and future land use map. And following that, we need to update zoning code and the map to be aligned with the plan. And we'll also be needing to update the city's subdivision regulations to also substantially comply with the new plan and zoning code. Again, where we are now is focused on the plan and on the policy level, and the implementation of the plan through new code and regulations is still to come. So what is a land use plan? A land use plan is the foundational document that cities in Montana use to highlight community priorities for future growth. It forms the basis for the city's zoning and development decisions. It outlines a vision for Missoula that can meet community needs and desires while also planning for economic growth, environmental protection, and infrastructure needs. And just to point out that the land use plan, as it is in accordance with the Planning Act, is different from the previous growth policy. in that it's more specifically targeted to land use related policy, and it must tie aspirational policy to demonstrated projected needs. The land use plan is based on a broad and comprehensive level of data collection and analysis, which includes identifying and analyzing existing conditions, future opportunities and constraints, and acknowledging the potential impacts of development within the area. This data and analysis is detailed in the community profile. The assessment of existing conditions, constraints, and future opportunities runs through the elements listed here: housing, local services and facilities, economic development, and natural resources and environment and hazards. All of this information informs where and how we will provide for our community before and by 2045. Just to point out, a key analysis that is required by the Planning Act is to assess our projected housing needs and identify specific regulatory tools for accommodating the identified needed housing capacity. So in summary here, we have reviewed and considered these requirements that come from the Planning Act and addressed those requirements in the adoption criteria and consideration sections of the staff report. The report runs through the applicable requirements of Part 1 and Part 2 of the Planning Act in detail and determines that we are in compliance with the Act. This slide breaks down the various sections that were reviewed. And of course, if you have any questions about any specific elements or considerations for how we're complying with state law, staff can address it more directly and bring up any necessary information. So with that, I'm going to pass things over to Emily to talk through the extensive community engagement around this effort.
Thank you, Ben. I'm Emily Gluckin. I'm a senior planner on the long range planning team, and I'm going to give you an overview of our robust process. We've talked a lot about our overall commitment to engagement, and so want to share a summary of what the specific outcomes and results are from each of these steps in the process. The land use plan featured a robust process that was really designed to involve a broad range of community members through various in-person and virtual opportunities. And these included anything from public events, stakeholder meetings, presentations, tabling at existing events, opportunities for written comments, social media posts, and newsletters. As of now and growing, we've held around 150 outreach opportunities with a number of different stakeholder groups. We've had 18 formal community-wide events that we've reached nearly 900 Missoulians through. We have had 20 presentations to Planning Board, the Land Use Planning Committee, and City Council. And then we've held 17 meetings with the Our Missoula Community Advisory Group throughout the life of this project. And not included in these numbers are the dozens and dozens of one-on-one meetings that we have had with individuals and community partners in an effort to stick to our mission of building relationships and building trust through this project. And our engagement approach really included efforts to better serve traditionally marginalized and underrepresented communities that haven't historically had a seat at the table. This effort was really spearheaded by our community engagement specialist and was intended to be supplemental to our typical process of engaging community members, business owners, landowners, governmental agencies, development community professionals, and so on. So essentially our goal was to make the table bigger for those to be able to have a seat at it. So starting at the beginning, our initial engagement began in December 2022, almost exactly to the day, with a community kickoff event that was organized in partnership with Common Good Missoula. And this event had the goal of creating a deeper understanding of the project's significance through what's called a civic academy model. And this encouraged sharing of information and sharing of personal experiences. We had a really awesome turnout with around 250 attendees there to help us kick off this project. Community engagement during the second phase of the project was dedicated to defining issues and sharing ideas, experiences, and concerns related to how Missoula has grown and developed in recent years. Our Missoula team organized or supported 46 engagement opportunities between spring and fall of 2023. And this was between public presentations, stakeholder meetings, table talks that were organized in partnership with Common Good Missoula. We tabled at existing community events and had a number of virtual activities. And in total, over 890 people were reached. And while we had the questions that you see on the screen as guides for discussions with the community, these conversations were more informal, and that allowed them to cover broad topics outside of these specific questions. So as a result of these conversations, we gathered nearly 950 comments to kind of work through and supplement our feedback. The sentiments expressed during this engagement cycle first broadly confirmed that the city's equity findings that came in the equity and land use report align with residents' day-to-day experiences of living in Missoula. And then the feedback received, especially the aggregate themes of the comments, shed light on top resident concerns in relation to equity and inform the types of land use changes that the city should consider to advance equity through the land use plan. And then the second part of community engagement in phase 2 expanded on these equity-related conversations by defining what residents value in their neighborhoods now and in the future. And the goal of this cycle was to confirm how well the previous growth policy captured community values and if the city needed to update our vision accordingly in this new land use plan. It featured 3 in-person opportunities and 1 virtual option last winter, and through this we captured nearly 150 participants. Between what we called a vote on your values activity and a neighborhood mapping activity, the feedback received helped our team understand what residents value most about the places that they live. And this feedback influenced the overall organization of the land use plan document and helped inform the themes, goals, and policy objectives that are now in the plan. We knew from previous engagement and just how the current reality of Missoula was that housing affordability and accessibility was an overarching concern for the community. So for that reason, the first engagement cycle in the 3rd phase was designed to help our team understand the community appetite for expanding housing diversity in Missoula's predominantly residential areas. We had 6 opportunities to participate in what was a map-based activity, and we had 132 participants take part in that. What we learned from this activity was that there is an overall desire for more housing diversity throughout the city's residential areas. And the themes and scores captured from this activity and the conversations around them inform the development of a menu of scenarios and influence the locations that growth and density were proposed in those scenarios. And then during the second part of phase 3, our team presented these 3 scenario options to the community, along with comparisons between each scenario and information about how each scenario would impact things like housing capacity, housing affordability, and climate resilience, as well as connectivity and equity. We held 2 in-person open houses, 1 stakeholder workshop, and a virtual open house option in July, and we got over 300 responses to the survey questions. And these survey responses gave us information about the type of growth that is supported most broadly throughout the community, and these responses were also used to help us develop a preferred scenario for growth, which ultimately formed the basis for the land use strategy that's now in the land use plan. And then bringing us to the final phase of the land use plan process, in this kind of final stage of engagement, we shared the results of what was a 2-year process with the release of the public review draft of the land use plan. And this was the last opportunity for us to receive public feedback on this draft before the final adoption process that we're in now. Sorry. The purpose of these engagement efforts that we held during the fall was to confirm that the draft land use plan resonated with the community and to help us identify areas of concern that we would potentially need to rectify in the adoption draft of the plan. We held 6 community-wide events. We held 5 presentations to stakeholder groups, sent requests for comment to organizations and agencies, and we provided a number of ways to provide comment on the draft plan online. And in total, we received roughly 1,000 comments on the draft plan through all of these different venues. And each of these comments that we received was recorded, reviewed, and analyzed by our team. And then we organized each of the comments into what we were calling buckets in order to determine how to address them in the adoption draft. And these categories or buckets include either typographical corrections or edits to maps or graphics in the plan. Then there were comments indicating that ideas, concepts, or details were not clear to the reader and that more clarity in the text would be helpful. And then there were recommendations for more substantive changes. And then these were broken into either recommendations that are in alignment with the overall project goals or those that are not in alignment with project goals or outside of the scope of the project. Documentation of each individual comment is attached at the end of the engagement summary. It's a pretty long document now. And a higher level summary of the common issues raised, and then our team's responses to these common issues can be found in the community engagement summary in Appendix F. Of the common issues in the comments that we received, we had themes ranging from the mapping of place types, street types, and sensitive lands, again, typographical errors, development processes, including zoning codes and the effectiveness of focus inward. There were transportation-related comments about safer streets, parking, and public transit. And then there were equity-related concerns that related to either housing affordability, loss of neighborhood character, and houselessness and displacement. As a general summary of the updates we made between the public review draft and the adoption draft, these include copy edits to address those typos, improving clarity in the language of the plan, especially related to parks, trails, open space, and climate resiliency, and to make better connections between the different elements of the plan. We updated some of the goals and objectives in the land use policy themes, as well as some of the descriptions and mapping of the place types. And then we supplemented the community profile with some additional information about environmental hazards, healthcare, and the public school system. And a detailed list of all of the updates made between the public review draft and the adoption draft is outlined in the staff report. And I'll conclude my section here by just noting that engagement for the Missoula project does not end with the adoption of the land use plan. We'll be pivoting to engaging around code reform starting in the new year. And we've laid a lot of groundwork over the past few years, and we'll continue to build off of that foundation of feedback with the future engagement that we do. And more info will be coming soon about code-related opportunities in the near future. With that, I will pass it to Madsen to give us an overview of the land use plan.
Hold this closer. All right, thank you, Emily, and thank you all for your time and attention. I am Madsen Matthias. I'm an associate planner with the city's community and long-range planning team, and I'm going to walk you through the key components of this plan and how it will shape Missoula's future. So the land use plan study area spans just over 40,000 acres. A little over half falls in the city of Missoula's jurisdiction, while just under half is within the Missoula County's jurisdiction. This plan is organized into 5 chapters: an introduction, land use policy themes, the land use strategy, adoption and amendments, and implementation. The policy themes and land use strategy chapters offer detailed guidance on how Missoula's vision for growth and the strategies on Missoula's vision for growth and the strategies on how to achieve it. The land use policy themes chapter outlined 6 key guiding themes for Missoula's growth. These are focus inward, housing choice and access, community and quality of life, environmental quality and climate resilience, health and safety, and economic health. These themes, shaped by data and community input, define the city's commitment to an equitable and resilient future. The land use strategy in Chapter 3 addresses Missoula's housing needs and growth projections, as well as infrastructure requirements. Our housing needs analysis shows that Missoula will require between 19,000 and 23,750 new homes by 2045. In addition, they must address a current deficit of about 2,700 to 3,700 homes. This brings the total housing need to approximately 27,500 new homes needed by 2045. So we're planning for housing capacity that exceeds just the projected need. Under the current zoning, Missoula has the capacity to exceed demand by around 14,000 homes. The proposed land use plan significantly expands housing capacity, adding room for about 50,000 more homes, an 85% increase, ensuring flexibility in meeting future demand and supporting diverse development. With this expansion, the plan estimates housing capacity at about 2.8 times the projected need, providing a solid baseline for future growth. However, the land use plan also supports a range of 3 to 4 times the need, allowing for flexibility and future adjustments. As new tools are implemented, this capacity will be regularly evaluated and refined. So these housing needs and capacity estimates are directly tied to the principles that shape the land use strategy. Feedback and analysis from the future growth scenarios open houses helped refine a preferred growth scenario, emphasizing residential growth in mixed-use centers and corridors, contributions from all neighborhoods, and diverse housing options while maintaining the character of existing homes. Additional priorities include small-scale neighborhood commercial services and parking regulations that balance housing, affordability, transportation, and neighborhood livability. The land use strategy establishes a framework for managing Missoula's growth by addressing projected population increases and housing needs. It defines place types as categories of types of land across the study area and street types as categories of the area's roads and rights of way. These designations guide the design and distribution of residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, and recreational areas, providing the foundation for local land use regulations. Grounded in environmental and infrastructure analysis and shaped by community input, this strategy promotes sustainable, walkable neighborhoods and diverse housing options. Regular updates every 5 years will ensure the plan adapts to Missoula's evolving needs. The place types specifically focus on how we use and experience our built environment, not just density. Unlike traditional land use planning, which emphasizes numbers, place types highlight areas with unique combinations of land uses, built form, mobility, intensity, and constraints. This approach aligns with how we naturally think about urban form, making it easier to visualize future neighborhoods. The place types consider several factors in shaping the built environment, including community form, scale, block patterns, mobility, and connectivity. Other elements like parcel size, parks, open spaces, and sidewalks also play a role. All of these elements come together to define the overall environment of a block. This environment at the individual property level consists of building types, size, setbacks, height, and any other features that define the character of each property. And in this plan, there are 12 place types. They are divided into residential, commercial, and special uses. The descriptions for each type cover key criteria, including scale bars to indicate associated levels of intensity. The descriptions are subject to refinement during the 2025 zoning update. Missoula's residential place types vary in intensity, ranging from compact urban areas to quieter rural neighborhoods. Urban areas feature diverse housing options and strong transit connections, while medium-intensity areas offer more space and car access. Rural areas are lower density and car-dependent, though they still provide biking and walking opportunities. Urban residential high areas allow 6 to 8 units per parcel with buildings up to 4 stories. Urban residential low areas allow 4 to 6 units per parcel with buildings up to 3 stories. Limited urban residential and rural residential areas both permit 3 to 4 units per parcel with buildings ranging from 2 to 3 stories. Commercial intensity varies across the city, with downtown serving as the cultural and economic hub, prioritizing walkability and transit. Mixed-use corridors and centers are evolving to include mid-rise buildings, offering a balance of transportation options and a mix of residential and commercial spaces. Edge areas, on the other hand, remain more car-oriented, with larger commercial spaces and some residential elements. In terms of building height, downtown allows buildings up to 10 stories, while urban mixed-use areas permit buildings ranging from 6 to 8 stories, and limited urban mixed-use areas allow buildings up to 6 stories. And these special use place types are essential to Missoula's growth, providing key spaces for development while balancing environmental preservation. Industrial and employment areas support manufacturing and business activities, while civic areas accommodate community services such as schools and libraries. Open and resource areas preserve natural resources, and parks and conservation lands offer recreational opportunities. These place types vary in terms of development intensity. Industrial areas are going to allow buildings up to 5 stories, whereas open and resource areas are limited to 2-story buildings, and the civic areas are designed to be context dependent. Parks and conservation lands, however, are intended for no development, preserving their natural character. No. The place type map combines several inputs, including the city's future land use map, block pattern analysis, community feedback, and resources like the Parks and Recreation Plan and the Long Range Transportation Plan. It focuses on urban form and design, aligning future growth with existing conditions to ensure sustainable, vibrant development. A central goal is to raise allowable development densities while maintaining compatibility with the surrounding community and built form. Compatibility ensures the new development is going to fit within the established community context in terms of the building size, shape, location, and access. This is especially important for residential neighborhoods where infill development is often limited. By focusing on compatibility, we can create space for more diverse housing types, such as missing middle housing in predominantly single-family areas, while keeping changes palatable for the community. While the place types align with the county's growth plan, it's important to note that the place type designation and zoning aren't a one-to-one match. The place type designation and subsequent zoning will only apply to parcels upon annexation, triggered by a property owner's application. The typical and preferred characteristics for each place type are aspirational, guiding development, but not prescribing specific standards. These will inform the development standards going to be in the Unified Development Code. So informing place types, as I said, block patterns. These determine how different areas can accommodate growth. Commercial corridors along major roads are designed for higher density and better connectivity. Compact grids in historic neighborhoods promote walkability. Curvilinear and cul-de-sac patterns on the outskirts may require infrastructure improvements for walking and biking. Rural superblocks found in less populated areas often rely on cars due to large distances between intersections. This next slide highlights the connection between the Equity and Land Use Report and the Land Use Plan. The report identifies vulnerable areas in Missoula and emphasizes the importance of equity in development. The Land Use Plan is built on these recommendations to guide growth in a way that benefits all residents, particularly historically marginalized and vulnerable communities. The plan aims to address these issues, like displacement and houselessness, through both policy and physical development. The place types approach promotes equitable housing diversity across neighborhoods so that all areas may have access to opportunities and are included in Missoula's vision for vibrant, sustainable growth. So next, the residential suitability model helps identify areas best suited for development, focusing on infrastructure and access to walkable, vibrant neighborhoods. It also considers environmental factors like floodplains, slopes, and wildlife corridors, ensuring development aligns with both urban needs and environmental suitability. The plan balances safety concerns and responsible growth while accommodating Missoula's projected growth in an equitable way. City staff consulted key stakeholders, including the Office of Emergency Management and the Fire and Police Departments, to ensure that the plan addresses environmental hazards and infrastructure needs. For example, based on these discussions, the place types in areas like the Upper Rattlesnake are adjusted to support swift evacuation in case of wildfire, responding to the unique conditions of the area. This slide combines those two maps, really illustrating the relationship between residential suitability and the environmental constraints in Missoula's growth strategy. Blue areas are ideal for higher density development with minimal environmental risks, while red areas face significant constraints that may require mitigation or new infrastructure. Purple areas are more complex, needing further evaluation for both environmental hazards and infrastructure readiness. The place type designations for each neighborhood reflects these constraints, such as the floodplains, wildlife corridors, and areas with limited infrastructure. These factors influence the degree of change a neighborhood can support. For more constrained areas, we designate lower density place types to balance housing goals with health, safety, and these environmental considerations. So even in these areas, we're increasing housing capacity to meet future demand. While urban infill remains the priority, we're also planning for growth in less urban areas, incentivizing development where infrastructure is already in place. Greenfield development will still be necessary to meet housing needs. So this land use strategy, guided by place types, balances zoning capacity with realistic development potential. Each place type reflects the capacity for growth, factoring in infrastructure, environmental constraints, and equity considerations to ensure sustainable, vibrant neighborhoods. So now let's explore street types. Streets and public rights-of-way are key in shaping urban form and supporting growth. By connecting place types and street types, we're creating a cohesive approach to development, ensuring that streets and infrastructure align with land use and growth patterns. The goal here is to classify streets based on their function within the land use context. Unlike traditional methods, which focus on speed and volume, this approach considers the surrounding environment and the street's purpose. The idea is to provide clarity for developers, planners, and users, so everyone understands how streets contribute to Missoula's growth and land use. This approach ensures that transportation infrastructure can support adjacent land uses and aligns with the community goals. It builds on the 2020 long-range transportation plan and goes beyond just functional classifications, considering the broader context of each street. We are also updating design guidelines to reflect best practices, ensuring the right street types align with each place type. To develop the street types, we considered the surrounding context, land uses, zoning, place types, and urban form. We also looked at the transportation context, like street hierarchy, and prioritized different modes of transportation, such as bike routes and transit corridors. Importantly, we acknowledged that streets serve many functions, from stormwater management to public spaces, which shape their design. So in this plan, we've identified 8 street types, each categorized by location and land use context. These types include neighborhood streets, community streets, and regional streets. The neighborhood streets serve local traffic, connecting people with their neighborhoods. Community streets link different neighborhoods and handle higher traffic volumes, while regional streets connect Missoula to surrounding areas and serve as key routes for regional travel. This approach is simple yet flexible, ensuring that while the design of each street type may vary, their roles and functions remain clear. As we move into code reform, we will refine these street types to ensure that they effectively support the community's needs. Street types are designed around 2 main factors: mode emphasis and function. Mode emphasis determines which transportation modes a street prioritizes. Neighborhood streets, for example, focus on the pedestrians, promoting walkability and local access with features such as street trees for shade. Function refers to balancing human mobility with the vehicle traffic, determining the appropriate amount of curbside activity and access. So this approach allows for flexible design while ensuring streets meet clear, outcome-driven goals. Detailed standards will be established later, but this plan provides the foundational direction for streets to support the city's growth. And safety is a primary goal across all street types. The plan outlines a balance between the desired outcomes and existing infrastructure constraints, with specific speed and volume targets for each street type. These targets are designed to ensure safety while considering other needs such as fire and emergency services. Ultimately, the design treatments for each street type create safe, accessible, and convenient spaces for all. So we've mapped the street types based on existing infrastructure and place types to create a predictable framework for future growth and development. In summary, just like the place types, street types align with the land use plan's goals, ensuring that our transportation infrastructure supports the city's vision for growth, sustainability, vibrancy, and connectivity. This approach ensures that both streets and land uses work together seamlessly to create cohesive, sustainable neighborhoods for the future. So Chapter 4 of the Planning Act, or Chapter 4 of the plan addresses the Planning Act requirements for plan reviews and future amendments. It covers the creation of neighborhood plans and updates to the existing ones. Currently, the city has 19 neighborhood plans, but only 3, Midtown, Swatupkane, and the Downtown Master Plan, comply with the latest standards for community engagement and compliance with the current and projected conditions within the land use plan. As we adopt the new land use plan, 16 older neighborhood plans will be repealed. Any relevant recommendations from those plans have already been integrated into this new plan. Moving forward, a neighborhood planning strategic plan will guide how future neighborhood plans are developed in collaboration with the neighborhood councils. We've notified the related councils and received positive feedback about moving forward with the new framework. This motion includes the repeal of the outdated plans and sets the stage for future, more responsive planning. This map right here shows the boundaries of the neighborhood plans being carried forward in the land use plan. The Midtown, Swatupkane, and Downtown master plans are incorporated into the place type designations that cover them and will continue to guide development within their areas. And finally, the implementation chapter. It outlines how we'll move forward with the land use plan and meet the requirements of the Planning Act. We've reviewed current zoning regulations and identified areas for updating to align with the plan's goals, excuse me. To guide this, we've developed a tiered timeline for action. In the first year, we'll focus on key zoning amendments through the code reform project to align with the place type map. In the following 1 to 4 years, we'll address other necessary actions before the next review at that 5-year interval, with longer-term actions extending to 5 to 9 years and some goals set for 10+ years. There are over 150 actions covering zoning, coordination, infrastructure, programs, and funding. A key priority is developing and adopting streamlined zoning regulations early next year. Coordination will be key, and we will establish a land use plan implementation team to monitor progress and engage the public throughout the short and long-term processes. So now I'm going to pass the mic back to Ben to hit on a few concluding points. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Madsen. Madsen she's got the most energy of our group, so we gave her the longest part of the presentation. But we've got just a few more slides to go through, and then we'll be ready for public comment. At the Planning Board hearing on November 19th, the Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend the adoption of the land use plan and added an addition to the motion that City Council take public comment into consideration. We heard public comments from many members of the community that included general support for the land use plan, concerns about specific areas, including Fort Missoula, East Missoula, the North Side neighborhood, the area around DeSmet School, and also concerns relating to specific issues like accessibility and visitability, housing diversity, density versus compatibility and preservation, restrictive covenants, and transportation infrastructure. And those comments are further summarized and reported on in the Planning Board summary memo that is attached to the referral as part of the packet here. The discussion with planning board members included questions about the place type designations in certain areas, particularly the rattlesnake area, the difference between small scale, commercial, and mixed use designations, the details of the housing capacity analysis in the plan, and how the city land use plan interacts with county zoning on county lands. And just to note that we've continued to receive public comments since the planning board hearing, and those comments have been shared out to council and added to the referral periodically as they've been received by staff. And a set of comments that was received most recently since the committee meeting last week was shared out just ahead of the hearing tonight and should be available on as part of the referral. There are several staff recommended updates to the plan that were summarized and shared out in a memo ahead of the hearing as well that we'd also like to walk through and would ask the council considers these potential amendments. They include a narrative clarification on page 20 that's in response to comments suggested by a planning board member at the planning board hearing. We recommend adding the RMH mobile home residential mobile home zoning district to the list of comparable zoning districts that are for the all residential and mixed use place types. And that's in recognition that this type of development often does not fit well with standards for other more typical residential zoning districts. We recommend an edit to the neighborhood greenways description, again in response to public comment, and similarly in the street types section, an edit to the regional mixed-use street type description related to the target metrics that are laid out in that description on page 106. We recommend and adopt adding some language to further clarify what substantial compliance is, or how it should be understood when considering an amendment to the land use plan. That would be on page 112. We recommend adding an action to the implementation schedule to state the intention to make updates to the existing Parks and Recreation Manual to support its alignment with the UDC. Another implementation action recommendation is related to adding in language around incentives for visitability, and that's in response to public comment as well. And then finally, we recommend another new action to state and indicate a commitment and intent towards pursuing the acquisition and protection of areas recognized for their importance to the community through the city's open space planning processes. There are several additional staff recommended updates to the plan that have been identified since the update memo was published that we would also like council to consider. So we're going to share them here tonight and hope to add them into the to that recommendations memo as the process moves forward over the next week. And they include on page 77, adding the M1R zoning district as to the list of comparable zoning districts in the place type description there, and that would be for the urban mixed use high place type. The description of the urban mixed use high place type states that certain cottage industrial businesses will be allowed within the urban mixed use high designations. There are also certain areas that exist within this place type already that have small scale cottage industrial uses. So to continue to allow these uses, M1R zoning district should be explicitly stated as being a comparable zoning district in that place type. And then we also, staff are also recommending some corrections to the implementation actions roles table to make some clarifications and edits. These are also in response to some of the public comments that we received, and these would be to add the Parks and Recreation Department and Mountain Line to the list of government agencies, and to remove the Bicycle Pet Alliance from the list of community organizations, as that's no longer in effect. And finally, we want to include a recommendation to just generally clean up and finalize this document after it goes through this adoption process. So to end our presentation and just leave council and the public with some things to consider for the hearing, we'd like to walk through some adoption considerations. We hope that we've made clear that the new land use plan is a result of the components that we've discussed previously, including a wide range of analysis required by state law and also related to the initial phases of the Missoula project. Related policy and planning efforts, and also the community feedback we received throughout the project and which informed a preferred future growth scenario. All of these are woven together and we hope balanced to create the land use plan and the place type map. The plan integrates the 6 core equity and land use principles from the Missoula project, ensuring a housing and development approach that is inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. It distributes affordable housing across the city, encourages higher density development for smaller, more affordable homes, and expands housing options, including missing middle development in residential and mixed-use areas. The plan ensures that higher density housing is not limited to gentrifying neighborhoods with balanced growth and minimal changes in areas at risk of displacement. It prioritizes income-restricted affordable housing by expanding existing incentives and introducing new ones. The plan also focuses on building form rather than just density, highlighting compatibility with existing neighborhoods. And finally, it promotes walkable mixed-use communities with easy access to services and small-scale commercial spaces. In conclusion, the Missoula 2045 land use plan sets a framework to support Missoula's projected population growth, projected to add approximately 37,000 new residents by 2045, while addressing pressing issues that have emerged since the last growth policy update in 2015, especially related to housing capacity, climate resilience, equity, and connectivity. With housing affordability, social equity, and climate impacts in mind, the plan establishes policies to address these challenges directly, ensuring that Missoula evolves in alignment with community priorities and values. The project followed a robust public engagement approach that emphasized gathering community feedback and integrating it into each project phase. So overall, this plan offers a unified strategy for a vibrant, inclusive, and sustainable future for all Missoulians. Here's the motion for your consideration tonight. As a note, this is an amended version from what's currently on the referral to take into account the set of staff recommended updates. And we'll end things here. Our team is available for any questions you may have.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ben, Emily, Madsen. Appreciate your thorough presentation. And we now will shift to questions from council. And I'm wondering, before we do that, if Councilor Nugent, if you want to outline the process, the public process here until anticipated adoption.
Certainly. Thanks, Mayor Davis. As we discussed last week in committee and at our press conference, and I emailed my council colleagues, tonight's the first night of this public hearing. We will take public comment, hear from council members, discuss the land use plan, ask questions. At the end of this evening, we would put the motion on the floor and refer it back to committee, where we're already scheduled to discuss it Wednesday afternoon. That'll be a working session on any amendments that may come up. At the end of that working session, it'll be referred back to council for next Monday night to do the second Monday of the 2 Mondays we noticed for kind of public participation. And if the council so chooses, we could choose to take action that night or do something else, but that would be the first night we could take action.
Excellent. Thank you very much for outlining that process. And I also just want to note for members of the council as well as the public that the staff have done a thorough job tonight with the presentation outlining the work to date, and also presented this last Wednesday at the committee. Next Monday, when this is again available for council deliberation and public comment, the length of staff presentation, they'll be available for questions, but we won't be providing that length of presentation. So I just want to make sure people know what to anticipate going forward. But always welcome, of course, and we really hope you'll be here to help answer questions because your expertise is very welcome. And so with that, I'll move to council questions. And Councilor Campbell, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I concur with what's been said about the presentation. Thank you so much for this. Once again, very thorough, and congratulations on what I feel has been a great process past couple of years to get public participation within this land use plan update. I had 3 questions, but you whittled it down to just one because you addressed 2 of the issues I had, one dealing with neighborhood greenways. I've seen that come up again and again. I just had a constituent reach out to me just mere hours ago on the issue of bicycle versus vehicle conflict there, so I appreciate that, as well as the visitability issue in the implementation table. So I appreciate those staff changes. The one thing I'm still kind of wondering about, maybe you could expand on, is a concern that's been brought up a couple times recently through the public comment, written public comment and emails that have been attached recently, and particularly having to do with the rattlesnake area and the upper rattlesnake area in regards to ingress, egress, the land use place types, and density for future development up there. It came to my radar specifically from Adrian Beck, who's Disaster Emergency Services Director over at Missoula County. And being as I serve on the local emergency planning committee, that just kind of stuck out to me right away. And, you know, she addressed or had that concern as well, as far as how this land use plan would mesh with, you know, the ingress and egress issues that we've been continuing to have for quite some time up in the rattlesnake area, particularly when concerns of like wildfire potential or some other sort of natural disaster or man-made disaster with the corridor of I-90 and the railroad tracks, as far as like hazmat or what have you. And so I'm just wondering, obviously you've seen those comments because they're posted, but have you had an opportunity to evaluate that and see, you know, where it is you feel that the land use plan now fits with those concerns, or how those concerns might have been addressed?
Thank you for the question. We, as you said, we have received comments that have you know, shown concern about the issue of egress, especially in the rattlesnake, in the event of a potential event, of a wildfire event, and so it's, you know, generally we are trying to balance that concern with and with the guidance of the Office of Emergency Management, with where the risks are, with the other, you know, with our goals in the plan, and, you know, generally the plan incorporates consideration and analysis of a variety of environmental hazards and constraints. You know, again, these are documented in the community profile, and there's a variety of analyses that are that we've done and that are required by the state and that are itemized there to look at constraints and hazards. So the draft was created with these in mind. It's a goal and a challenge of the project to strike a balance between concerns over safety and responsible growth, with accommodating the projected growth for the area and distributing it in a way that is fair and equitable. And so we think that we're finding that line here and that balance related to those concerns.
Yeah, I might just add a little bit there. I think as it applies to the rattlesnake in particular, we did get feedback from the Office of Emergency Management that what we had previously articulated, I believe as urban mixed use, low, there were concerns with just that middle section of that rattlesnake, particularly due to some specific constraints that prevented swift evacuation if that was necessary due to wildfire. And so we did change that place type to limited urban residential. We did look at the Missoula Wildfire Hazard Risk Assessment map, which shows rattlesnake as moderate assessment, and the suitability map as well, which shows some areas for high suitability. And it's important to note, it's not just about one single consideration, and it's not just about the fire risk, but also primarily about evacuation and the limitations that the block patterns in that area present. When we layer that suitability map, which indicates some small pockets of high suitability in areas north of low with the environmental constraints of the map, we found that the area sees some high amenities and some high constraints. And so it was all of those factors in combination that resulted in us changing that place type to an urban, or I think we're calling it limited urban residential. It's important to note too that it isn't until we get into the zoning designations that we really understand how much of a capacity change that map change will present. As written now, urban residential low, it says could accommodate up to 4 to 6 units on any given parcel. Limited urban residential can accommodate up to 3 units per parcel. And so it could be a relatively small capacity loss. It could be more significant. We'll really define that through the creation of those zoning designations. But based on all the information that we had and further consultation with the Office of Emergency Management and Missoula Fire and Missoula Police Department on evacuation protocols, that change really felt warranted.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know there's been some of those conversations. I just thought I needed to get out there maybe a little bit more as far as what measures have been taken. And as you said, when we get down to the zoning part of it, we get parse that out a little bit better. So I appreciate that. And that's all I had.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Councilor Carlino.
Thanks. I just had a couple questions. I guess my first one would be, seeming to go along with all of our goals that we have with the land use plan, I'm wondering why we don't have like mixed use designations in every neighborhood. It looks like quite a few neighborhoods are missing that, and I'm just wondering if we could get a little bit more of an explanation, or see if there's possible wiggle room to have some mixed use designations in every neighborhood.
Well, I'll take a stab at replying. First of all, just to make the clarification and explanation, I think that one of the key shifts in the plan is to allow for commercial uses, at least to some degree, in all neighborhoods in the city. And those are listed in the building type descriptions of the place types as allowing for vertical or general mixed use building types. So the intent, at least, is to open that up, allow for a higher opportunity, increased opportunity for the presence of commercial services and businesses within our traditional neighborhoods, and I think we'd expect or anticipate that some of those would occur in a mixed-use building type, at least. And so, I'm not sure if that answers your question, or if you have a different idea in mind.
And I can just move on to the next question. I'm looking at like an earlier draft of the plan where like part of the lower and middle rattlesnake was designated as urban residential high, and then or maybe urban residential low, and then it got changed to limited urban residential. And I was just wondering the reasoning behind that, and then also looking at some of these other neighborhoods that are zoned entirely like urban residential low, like the Lewis and Clark neighborhood, for example. I'm concerned that we're still segregating neighborhoods based off of density, and we saw like through our analysis that right now currently we have neighborhoods segregated by class and race with the current map, and I'm concerned that we might be carrying that over. So I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit more about like why certain neighborhoods, entire neighborhoods, are zoned so low, and like Lewis and Clark, or perhaps the South Hills or Grant Creek, and wondering if we're concerned that we're still going to be, continuing some of that segregation into the future if we keep entire neighborhoods at such low density.
Mm-hmm. I can speak to a few of those and then pass it off to Ben. So the middle Rattlesnake area is that area we just discussed in relationship to Councilor Campbell's question about fire risk. And so that was the constraint that was taken into consideration with that particular map change. In all of the place type menus in the plan, you will see a list of constraints. And those constraints largely drove largely informed the place type designation. So in areas like Lewis and Clark, there's very set infrastructure in those areas. That area largely lacks alleyways and a lot of the connectivity that would be required to add the same level of density that you see in some of the other areas with more connected block patterns. And so the place type menu talks about the block pattern, it talks about the infrastructure, it talks about constraints in place. So those are the decisions that really informed the creation of especially those residential place type designations, as well as other constraints, environmental constraints, things like floodplain, things like information about fire or wildlife interface. And so all of those factors came into play.
Could I have one more question?
Sure, you bet, go ahead.
And then I'm curious about why we have like private lands designated as civic, and would that stop like all future development on those private lands?
Sorry, no, that's not the intent of the civic place type. The place type description includes both public and private ownership, and to some degree even expands what is allowable for private development from previous designations. So, the civic place type especially it's probably the most contextual place type, in that it really does kind of apply to a variety of different anticipated uses within that single place type.
All right. Thank you for your questions, Councilor Carlino, and we'll move to Councilor Melson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. First up, hats off and thanks to all the staff for their hard work on this. It is quite an achievement and a very impressive document. I am curious about the descriptions that are found under the built form heading within the place type descriptions. For example, on page 67, you've got urban residential high, and then there are all of the different blocks, land use, constraints, built form, mobility, just to orient where I'm coming from here. So for all of the residential place types, except for rural residential, the built form section specifies that building scale should be compatible with existing houses and buildings, and smaller units are encouraged for developments at higher intensities. I'm just hoping to unpack that a little bit, because to me, some subjective language like that, like compatible with, could create some ambiguity or some uncertainty for like a potential builder. So yeah, wondering if the intent is to clean that up during the code reform process, if that'll transition to more of like a form-based code. Yeah, just curious to learn more about the language choice in that block.
Yeah, thanks for that question. That's a good one. And if it's helpful, I can share a page of this on the screen if that's
Please
helpful.
do. Yeah, thank you.
Just give me a second here. So this is an example of one of the pages that I think you're asking about, and This is the more descriptive page of the urban residential high place type. But like you said, there are similar language and notes in the built form column, which also gives a kind of itemizes what type of housing diversity you might expect to find in the different place types and what building types those include, as well as indicated building scale, building height, and setbacks. Just within that column to give a rundown. There's a couple things going on here with that statement. One of them is that it ties back to principles from the equity and land use report, which, just to take it to a pretty high level here for what we're trying to do, and some of the general shifts that this plan is trying to bring into it is, part of the key findings from that report was that what we see with the way that our zoning is applied currently is that more often than not in our residentially zoned areas, the zoning, the standards and requirements support fewer larger homes more so than they do more smaller homes, and so that is kind of a, things are off there, that there's an attempt in this plan to try to course correct, to support to provide policy, update policy to support updated codes and regs that are that help us with our housing capacity issue, and that create those circumstances and considerations where we would hope to see it more likely than not that there would be more homes built, and typically that they would be smaller and more affordable. So that's one element of that, and another is that one of the key routes to doing that is to try to reorient and pivot so that this missing middle housing concept is brought back into our codes, and that's another kind of key element of what this project is trying to do, and again with the goal of providing more needed housing and housing that and one of the benefits of those housing models is that they are generally they fit into neighborhoods that already have those. A lot of those housing types are found throughout many of Missoula's neighborhoods. They were built at different periods of time, and it is something that we've kind of gotten away from, and that's a national trend, but we see it here in Missoula too, and so this project is is one of our key focuses here, is to try to get back to that as a way to continue seeing our neighborhoods grow and bring people in.
Do you have a follow-up? No.
And so just to close that thought, that the missing middle housing approach is a strategy for based in setting up compatible development and kind of describing compatible development that works for our residents and in our community, that also gives access to these building types that do allow for more housing capacity. And I would just make the point that this statement shouldn't be taken out of as separate from what the place types are describing. And so, we, as part of designing these or putting these together and developing what they are and what type of development they describe, we see these as compatible levels of development and scales of development within these different contexts.
And just to quickly answer your question about the role and what we get into in zoning, I think all of the details that you see on those place type menus are meant to illustrate how we might see development in these place types building out, the types of development we might see, the building form in those developments. But that is not regulation. So we do then move into the creation of zoning districts and the creation of regulation around that with these place types as a guide, but the zoning designations will not just be taken from that sheet, right? That there's work to be done there.
Did that answer your question? Okay, great, thank you. And Councilor Jordan.
Thank you. I just wanted to, if possible, dig into a little bit further a question that Mr. Carlino asked about the area down in Lewis and Clark neighborhood. I know you mentioned some high-level reasons why it is categorized as urban residential low, but it's surrounded by urban residential high and limited urban mixed use and urban mixed use low. It seems like a prime location to add urban residential high. Can you walk us through the specific decisions made to categorize that part of town urban residential low, please?
I can start with a few concepts and then see where staff have to add. I think what you'll see if you really drill in and look at that map is those designations change when those block patterns change, when the blocks in the Lewis and Clark area really start to be what's called more curvilinear blocks as outlined in the plan. They lack alleyways. The infrastructure starts to look very different. And the reason why that place type changes is because to go in and develop at the intensity in the other place types without the infrastructure in place to support that becomes very costly, both for the community and for developers, and then that results in more costly home types. And so we really looked at within each place type being able to build as intensely as the infrastructures and the constraints allow it to. And every place type is participating and contributing meaningfully to increases in homes across the community in ways that they can with their given constraints, and infrastructure is a big constraint given the cost of infrastructure that has to be put in either at the time of construction or by the city proactively in advance of that.
Thank you for that. I think it kind of seems like, you know, if it gets preserved, those houses are going to become increasingly more unaffordable. And so I guess what I'm wondering now, my next question is if developers propose curvy streets, are they going to be able to maintain low density neighborhoods? And is that a way to maybe prohibit equality across town?
Yeah. Well, it's important to note that even in those limited urban residential neighborhoods where there can be one home today, there can be up to 3 homes in the future. And so that is still meaningful change for 3 homes to be allowed on what is a standard plot or a standard parcel in that area today. And so I think we already will see significant changes based on what's on the ground today and what can be built in the future or transition to in the future. In terms of how developers build out streets, you know, most of our streets are built out except in our greenfield areas, and you will see the place type designations for some of those, the Mullen area being one of those where we are anticipating more intense development than we would be in some of our built out more suburban neighborhoods today. So I think it's unlikely that we would see developers coming in and building infrastructure to support lower densities. What we're seeing is the development community really wants to be able to maximize the limited land that we have to build on today.
Please go right. Yeah.
Thank you. I just tried to search the document for a definition of parcel size, or just like what is a typical parcel size? So when you say these places will see up to 3 homes on a typical parcel size, what does that mean?
Well, to point to that, as far as a definition, I would point to the introduction on page 62. There's a definition of parcel size on the upper right-hand corner that is meant to kind of help to understand or to set up how to read these scales and indications within the individual place type chapters. But I will say, you know, we've gotten questions about parcel size that have come up, you know, in public comment and in the planning board hearing. Several of the place type descriptions indicate typical and or preferred dimensions or characteristics related to land use, build form, mobility considerations. parcel size. These should generally be understood as illustrative and aspirational for what type and scale of change and development the community can expect within that place type over time. They're not meant to describe existing conditions or prescribe specific standards. They're more to help to describe what a given place type describes for compatibility within that given context. Ultimately, they'll be used as a reference point for developing our standards in the new code, which we hope are clear, relatable, and navigable. But at this point in the process, these are guidance and not specific rules. I think there may also be a understanding of these that these are meant to prescribe a specific minimum parcel size, and that is, just to be clear, that's not the case of these descriptions.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you for your questions, Councillor Jordan. And any other questions tonight from council members? I know there was several questions at committee too, so folks have had their opportunity to ask questions, and these have all been really good. All right then, and so because this evening this is a public hearing, we have publicly noticed that the intention is to again present this land use plan to make sure that we have the opportunity to hear from the public, and that it is intended to go back to committee on Wednesday. So we will go right from questions from council then to public comment and offer this opportunity for folks in the audience to provide comment. Again, comments are limited to 3 minutes or less. Please identify your name for the record, and I'll help you keep time up here. We'll start with folks in the room, and then I'll shift to folks online. And Councillor, okay, I saw your hand was raised, but I didn't know if you had, okay, great. So with that, is there any public comment this evening? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lizzie. I'm an environmental attorney living in Missoula, and I'm here with Common Good Missoula. We want to first congratulate the staff on creating an incredible future land use plan for our community. We appreciate the massive efforts with outreach and the plan's focus on doing what it can to make Missoula an even better place to live while keeping regular residents in mind. I personally support this plan for several reasons. First, I appreciate the plan's commitment to balancing urban development with environmental protection because I care deeply about protecting wildlife habitats in an increasingly developed landscape. Second, I support the efforts already made and future commitments to continuing to work with the Salish and Kootenai tribes and to work alongside Indigenous peoples in the area. Lastly, as someone who would love to be able to afford a house, I am heartened to see the dedication to addressing the housing shortage and affordability crisis. At this time, we have two changes we'd like to see adopted, which have already been mentioned, both of which are supported by senior city staff and are included in the proposed amendments. They are a change on page 101 to the Greenway descriptions. The sentence starting, are typically calm enough for bicycles and vehicles to share space, although they may have dedicated separate facilities, period. We propose to strike the rest of that sentence. And then on page 118, we propose adding, quote, develop incentives for universal design and visitability, end quote, into the implementation action on table number 30. We hope that you pass this future land use map with these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Lizzie. All right, other members of the public, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Chris Young-Greer, and I am the Director of Racial Justice, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at the YWCA of Missoula, and also a co-founding member of the Montana Black Collective Missoula, and I am here with Common Good. I would like to enthusiastically congratulate the amazing staff on an incredible future land use plan. We have been impressed with the outreach process and tireless efforts regarding the plan's focus on doing what it can to make Missoula an even better and more accessible place to live and thrive. This plan benefits our regular residents and everyday folks alike and in mind. Second, I personally support this plan because it is vital for those of us who call Missoula home to have the assurance that we can continue to contribute our talents, wisdom, support, personal contributions, and community uplift as we age. The aging population of Missoula and those with mobility issues, whether temporary or permanent, deserve affordable housing where we can gracefully and independently age in place. A place where we can reap the benefits without fear of expulsion, in a city where we have so lovingly, consistently, and unapologetically invested in. So finally, at this time, we have 2 changes, as my constituent before mentioned, that we like to see adopted, both of which are supported by senior staff and are included in the proposed amendments, and they are: page 101, change the greenway descriptions in this line, are typically calm enough for bicycles and vehicles to share space, although they may have dedicated separate facilities, period, and to strike when passing particularly busy designations, such as regional parks and shopping centers. Secondly, page 118, add, develop incentives for universal design and visibility into the implementation action table number 30. Please pass this future land use map with these above amendments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Young-Greer. Thank you. Other members of the public, come on up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, staff. My name is Baron Pepper. I'm an architect, I'm a homeowner in the University District, and I'm a member of Pro Housing Missoula. I also want to congratulate everybody on this huge Herculean feat of getting to this point and the incredible community outreach that Emily spoke to several times in the presentation. One of the times that I wrote down was 150 community engagement opportunities, 18 citywide events, and 900 Missoulians weighing in on this process. So I feel really excited that we can look to the feedback and the information that has come from that process to inform what things we want to be excited about, what things we want to have caution around. Housing feels not just in Missoula, but across the country like the issue of our time. It's affecting everybody. And whether it was from the statewide legislation or the process that we've been undergoing for 2 years, it feels like housing is the top priority. So my concern with what is showing up in the code right now, or in the draft land use plan, is the language around compatibility. And as it's come up a couple different times tonight, this might get fleshed out in the zoning plan, but my concern would be that we would see compatibility language prevent the housing from being implemented, especially in a place like where I live in the university neighborhood that says that we ought to see similar intensity as Franklin of the Fort, which, as an aside from an equity standpoint, I'm so excited to see the draft land use plan starting to balance out the opportunity for housing. But then our current zoning in Title 20 talks about, in the historic overlay districts, it talks about compatibility language as well. My understanding is that compatibility, insofar as the historic overlays, is in there to prevent McMansions, where 2 small houses would get taken down and then 1 giant house getting built. I think it's really important to have things in the code that are going to prevent that type of development, given our priorities. But I could also see it being used the other direction to say we need a development to be compatible with single-family historic residential, when the zoning might say that we can build a 6-plex. Practically speaking, as an architect, I'm like, they're not gonna be the same. And so I just, personally as a citizen, I wanna say my priorities are clear, that I would love to see housing over compatibility. And something that I'm really excited about that's in the draft land use plan is that it's not just me, it's 90% of Missoulians. So 3 sections that I'd just like to highlight is when presented at these public events with the direct question of which outcome would you be most supportive of, only 8% of Missoulians said that ensuring that new housing fits within the scale and design of our current neighborhoods. 90% would prefer housing over fitting it. Is that my time?
It is your time.
The last 2 I'll read real quick is only 9% said that they wanted new housing to be similar in scale and design to the existing housing. even if the housing is less feasible to develop and fewer units are able to be created, and 10% said that the design and scale of these housing developments should be compatible with their existing neighborhood. So the message is clear. I'm excited to see more housing, and I'm curious to see how this compatibility language gets fleshed out in the code. Thank you all.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Pepper. All right, additional public comment, come on up.
Mayor Davis, city council members and staff. My name's Dave Harmon. I've lived here in Missoula for the past 35 years, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak. In my opinion, this land use plan that the preferred one that you've chosen is good. It addresses the two major things I think that we're looking at in Missoula, one being housing, and the other, in my opinion, is the climate. For the past 24 years or so, I've been working on climate issues. It's important to me, and I think that the alternative that you've chosen is going to go a long ways towards addressing climate change. The group I'm with is 350 Montana, and we've got quite a few members, and I just want to let you know that we're looking forward to partnering with you all on Missoula's goal of 100% clean electricity by 2030, and I think there's also a goal of carbon neutrality by 2045, and hope we can keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harmon. Other public comment, come on up.
Hi, my name is Russell Wisniewski. I also go by Ski. I'm an architect in Montana with a specialty in affordable and multifamily housing, and I'm also here with Common Good, Missoula. Also, really appreciate all the work the planning staff has done. As somebody who reads stuff like this all the time, it's really good. I really love it. I also have a background in community engagement. You guys have done an excellent job, and I really appreciate all the work that's gone into everything from the research to the infographics. I personally support this plan because I'd love to have a permanent place for my family to call home. We moved to Missoula when my family was expecting our second daughter, and we sold our house and then moved here and then haven't been able to buy a house. As an architect and someone who's actively looking for a place to call home permanently, I really appreciate the flexibility of the plan, and I look forward to how it'll allow not only our family but others to find and or create housing that's more affordable, equitable, and diverse. Finally, at this time, Common Good and all of us here representing them want to see some of those changes adopted that they've already mentioned. The change on page 101 to the Greenway description, which I will not bore you with reading again, but it's the same. And the same on page 118 about developing incentives for universal design and visibility. We really hope that you'll pass this land use map and in these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wisniewski. Appreciate your comments. All right, other members of the public, come on up.
Hi, my name is Kirsten Newman. I live in Ward 1, and I just wanted to touch on parking. I hear the word access used a lot in city projects, but it doesn't always mean access or accessibility for people with disabilities. This presentation touched on regulating parking in a manner that balances affordability and community needs. Now, I'd like us to remember that when we think about balance, the availability of parking is an equitability issue. For some people with disabilities like myself, a private vehicle is a necessity. Accessibility for people with disabilities begins at the point of arrival, and when parking is not available, that housing complex or business is not accessible or available to some of us. Decreasing or eliminating parking needs to be done in a mindful way to ensure equitability for people with disabilities as well as our elders. While public transportation within the city is incredible, I still depend on my vehicle for access to this community as someone with a disability. We also need to remember that we are a rural state that doesn't have adequate regional public transportation. So if a private vehicle is a necessity for some of us until the state's regional transportation options improve. If someone's car is parked for a period of time, their private vehicle may be necessary for access, for example, to healthcare that's not available in Missoula. A private vehicle can equate to accessibility. For equitable housing, we can look to Villaggio's parking garage as an example of high-density housing while also providing parking equity. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Newman. Appreciate that. Other public comment, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor Davis, members of the council and staff. Thank you all for your time tonight. My name is Teresa Martinoski, and I work with Summit Independent Living here in Missoula as a program support specialist, but I'm here tonight also on behalf of Common Good Missoula. And as everyone has expressed, we'd really like to thank the team that has worked so hard, so diligently to get this plan to where it is right now. And thank you too, even for being willing to come out to East Missoula tomorrow night to talk yet again. So even though it feels like it might be the end of this, they're still moving it. So I personally do support this plan, kind of on a bigger scale, that I feel that it really embraces a sense of community that makes Missoula the place that we've loved. I've been here for 40 plus years, so I've seen a lot of changes in Missoula. But by creating communities and using the foresight to build communities that will offer things within each neighborhood that people need to be engaged in their neighborhoods, hopefully it will help people that live in those neighborhoods once again feel that sense of pride in their area and really want to embrace their neighbors and continue building those neighborhoods. My hope is also that excuse me, I'm sorry, I just lost my place on here. That with the language that's been used, that you will continue not only speaking of, but taking actual active steps towards including housing for people, not just the ones that make that livable wage in Missoula or beyond, whatever livable wage is these days, but also for people that are on fixed incomes, such as people that are retired, senior citizens, people with long-term or permanent disabilities that don't have a choice on what they bring into the household economic-wise, but still equally need places, safe, affordable places to live. And I would encourage also that the age in place idea be kept to the forefront. Again, I will say finally, the two changes that have been spoken of by my colleagues back here about the greenway, striking that definition of when those might be appropriate, and just keeping the ideas of greenways for all people. And let's include also in that, we talk about walkability, but also people in wheelchairs, people with visual impairments. They need those safe spaces as well. And then lastly, I heard the timer. Lastly, I know I saw and heard that visitability has been included in the amendments, but universal design, or possibly even picking another term that means the same thing, to encourage developers to design some of their houses so people can age in place, because housing is becoming more and more of an investment for us, and therefore being able to stay there long term makes it a reasonable investment. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Martinoski. Appreciate your comments. Other members of the public for public comment tonight, come on up.
Hi, my name's Adam Cook. I live here in town on the north side, and I've been following this process, and I really appreciate what's been done. I think just about everyone here recognizes it's a pretty big improvement. A few really brief items I wanted to mention. We've talked a bit about the rattlesnake, where currently all of the upzoning is generally concentrated in the bottom of the valley. I personally feel that fire mitigation or fire risk mitigation is something that should be done from the periphery in rather than blanket exclusion of the Upper Valley in that in the place type changes. I think that more housing options up there would increase the affordability of the Upper Valley rather than concentrating it solely in the bottom of the valley, and mixed use options would allow us to reduce vehicle travel through Rattlesnake Drive and Greeno. And then on top of that, briefly, I think one thing that hasn't been touched on yet is it would be, I'd like to advocate for potentially making definitions of certain limited urban place types a little more ambitious, specifically the limited urban mixed use. I think that I know that we have infrastructure limitations in certain places that are listed under that type currently, West Broadway Reserve. But I think that if we are going to set these boundaries and define these place types, that we should be ambitious with that. We should bring it to something closer to one of the urban mixed-use place types, or just make those have those places fall in that place type altogether. Lastly, while I think it is good to maintain industrial space in Missoula, I would also like to put out the idea of also entertaining the possibility of residential uses in industrial areas where not made prohibitive by safety issues. I think we should be generally giving people the opportunity to live near where they want to work if that's their choice. And so I think that we should, it would be nice to include that kind of text in the final industrial place type definition. And that's all I'll subject you to tonight. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it Mr. Hook or Mr. Cook?
Cook, C-O-O.
Cook. Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Big K, Montana, Spitzmacher. I want to build off what he just said. We got a grandiose plan, beautiful, whatever. It takes cash flow to bring it along. It takes an investment of capital businesses that bring in cash into the community. Instead of we sending out our cash to Walmart, Albertsons, and all these Amazon. Where is the cash going to come from to finance the city if we don't have the cash already to finance it yet? And building an enterprise of a business where you bring cash into the community instead of out of the community. Building houses and so forth is one cash flow, but it takes somebody to pay the mortgage.
Thank you, Mr. Spitzmacher. And Mr. Spitzmacher, I want to just thank you for wearing your bicycle flare tonight. I know you bike a lot, and it's a really important element to our safety in our community. I wish more people biking at night would wear those colors, so thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. Next public comment, come on up.
Mrs. Mayor, I want kudos on my shirt.
Well, it's awesome. It's, it's John, it's awesome for sure.
I didn't bring this up last time. It's essentially what this, my name is John Wolverton. I'm a resident of the North Side. I'm also an active volunteer with Pro Housing Missoula. And that's essentially what this conversation is about. It's about legalizing housing. Part of legalizing housing is understanding we have to move toward more compact development. That means that saves open spaces and wildlands. That's a win. That means it addresses climate change. It's a win. It enables welcoming neighborhoods that work better for more of a diversity of people and better for small businesses. That's a win. It's not a zero-sum game. If it's good for all of us and for all the creatures and wildlands surrounding us, it's good work and it's great work. I appreciate all the work the staff has put into this. So that said, I'd say let's take it farther. Let's allow it to take us farther into the future and toward new manners of engagement between the public and the private sphere. As previously pointed out, I think there's concerns with the compatibility language. I think that's something that needs to be reconsidered and taken a lot closer to look at. Also, there's some language in this plan now that would preclude a full and robust conversation about parking mandates in the future. Particularly, there's a part in page 58 that that should be reconsidered so that we have a lot of flexibility as we move forward into the code rewrite, so that we can educate ourselves on what that might mean in balancing housing, parking, and all sorts of other community amenities and walkability. Overall, this is great work, and it's much needed update that is very applauded. And we look forward to the next steps that the development and zoning code modernization provides a manner for a good structure, necessary structure to meet the aspirations of this plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wolverton. All right, other members of the public wishing to make comment, come on up.
My name's Carrie Schreiber. Mayor, council people, staff, thank you for your work on this. I'm really excited about many parts of it. What I'm anxious about is this call for 5 to 8 story buildings. That's a drastic change from what we have now. I was at Old Sawmill District after the holiday on Higgins. It was beautiful with all the lights, but those are like 3 and 4 story buildings, and there's a lot of overflow parking over at the Osprey Field. So when we're talking about these 5 to 8 story buildings, imagining what that parking would look like, imagining what sort of shadows that's going to cast and availability to sunlight and to the views. And I'm also concerned if our water table can handle this great increase in population. But as far as smaller houses and infill, that sounds wonderful. And I appreciate all the support for neighborhood greenways.
Thank you, Ms. Schreiber. Other members of the public wanting to make public comment tonight. Come on up, don't be shy.
Ooh, someone else's notes too. Hi, I'm Brett Bovel, University District renter. I think it's a great start. I want to thank everybody for doing all the work, collecting public comment over the years. I know it's not easy. I'm really excited to see the next steps go forward. And just in general, like, change is going to be hard. The status quo is not really sustainable for anyone. And I'm pretty tired of friends having to leave to start families in places where they can afford houses. And so change is hard. Voting on this should be easier than that. And it's got to be easier than making me find new friends as an adult. Thank you all.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Volvo. Okay. Additional comment, come on up.
Hi, Jana Richter, R-I-C-H-T-E-R. You'll hear from me a lot. I don't want to reiterate too much. But I just wanted to, first commend everybody for their hard work. And I'm excited to chat more about how we can be more creative with community engagement and meet people in different ways. I recognize that though we've had a great feat in making this information more accessible, this information is still really confusing to a lot of people, and we have a big learning curve to make this digestible to the wide variety of our public who only thinks about zoning for about 2 minutes a month, but who will show up and say a lot of words and have a lot of thoughts and feelings about development when it comes through. So yeah, excited to be more creative with how we do that with our general public. And yeah, I also just wanted to remind for a lot of folks out there that, we are expecting 37,000 new neighbors by 2045. We already have a shortage of houses. We already have people who are actively displaced and are housing insecure. I want to remind that for every $100,000 added to your median home price, your increase in houselessness is on average nationwide 9% higher. When we're thinking about a lot of our houselessness policy, I really want to offer that being bold with our land use plan, being bold with how we can commit to housing for all should be at the forefront of our minds, because we know that it's going to take a lot of different creative solutions to not just bring more housing supply into our community, but more subsidy to actually create housing that's actually affordable, to create renters protections for people who are already at risk of being displaced from their home, who are already cutting corners in ways that y'all have heard plenty about, and also ways that we haven't. And so I would just encourage, as we're thinking about the whole picture of what makes whole neighborhoods and whole communities, it's not just about housing supply, though it is a big part. It's about creating connected communities, creating accessibility for folks. It's about creating neighborhoods that have coffee shops and access to public transportation and spaces to gather and connect and have accessible information spaces, places for people to learn and understand and get to know their community members and share stories. And I think that will build public trust. It will build public communication. I think we need to think about all of this. And I encourage you, when other things come down the pipeline, whether it's right to council, whether it's opportunities from our subsidy to our city, whether it's advocating at the state level for more housing funds, that we be really, really bold and clear that this is something that we need to do as a whole community. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Jana. All right, other public comment? Come on up.
Greetings all. My name is Dr. Alan Noonan. I attend St. Francis Xavier and I'm up on the north side. I'm here as a member of Common Good Missoula. I want to congratulate the city staff on all of their hard work on the future land plan. I believe public outreach is an important facet in our participatory democracy, and I'm impressed at the plan's effort to do this and its focus on making Missoula a better place for people to live. I especially support this plan because of my 2-month-old daughter, who I hope can grow up in a city where she can find affordable housing, increasing equity, and improved community connectivity. I want her to be able to walk, bike, or live in any part of this great city. After reviewing the land use plan and place type map, there are 2 changes that my colleagues have already recommended that I would like to re-emphasize as well. The page 101 change and the page 118 change. No need to reiterate them again. Please place this future land use map or future land use map plan with these amendments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Noonan. All right, other public comment?
Good evening, Jim Sayer, University neighborhood resident, and been here 20 years. And when I got here, my daughters were really young, and I thought they would go through the school system, go to university, and then leave for some big city, the Bright Lights big city. And it turns out 2 of them are here, and one of them wants to move back from Minneapolis, which shocks me, but it also reminded me of the need for housing for all generations. I think it's important in general, but when it's so close to home, you definitely think about it even more. I'm so happy about the conversation tonight. You should really be proud that we're at this point after 2 years. The staff and all of you have created a plan that I think is going to be a great step forward for Missoula. I do want you to look carefully again at page 58 in the parking requirements. You see hundreds of cities throughout the U.S., and not just your normal candidate cities, you know, the liberal cities that might say, hey, let's get rid of parking mandates, but you're seeing cities all over of all political persuasions, even like Sandpoint, Idaho, that are getting rid of parking requirements. They're not getting rid of parking. They're not saying that developers can't provide parking with their residences or their mixed use or their commercial developments. In fact, Minneapolis did away with theirs about 8 or 9 years ago, and they're still building parking. They're just calibrating it more carefully without a government mandate. And so I would ask you very carefully to look at what are our true parking requirements. We did some back of the envelope calculations on what's available right now. This is apart from anybody's garages or anything. If you look at all the street curb parking that we have in the city, if you look at all the lots that we have, we could have anywhere from 200 to 250,000 spaces right now for cars, for vehicles. So that's right now. So I would say, hey, you've been requiring parking in so many ways over the years. Let's declare victory and move on. And now let the market decide if we actually need additional parking for specific developments. So I'd look at page 58 because what it says is that, hey, we're not necessarily going to abandon parking requirements. I think between now and doing code reform, we should look carefully at whether we do need any kind of parking mandate. So I think this is a good opportunity to take a good plan and make it even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sayer. Other public comment tonight? Any other public comment in the room? All right, come on up.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Davey. I'm here with Common Good Missoula. Like everyone else, I really big heartfelt shout out to the staff for working on this for so long. To reach this place where, maybe one more week left for this really big deliverable. We started with a process of making sure that everyday citizens were really included in this plan. And the staff and the consultants honestly had to take a leap of faith to come with us on that. They wanted to do it, they were excited to do it, but we really pushed and we said, no, this is really gonna be for the people of Missoula. And so with the amendments that we have talked about, we really hope that you will eventually pass this plan next week. I do want to address some of the concerns about parking on page 58. We like the way it looks on page 58 right now. If we mess around too much with that, it'll come up in zoning, but it is one of the best incentives that we have for asking for visitable and affordable housing. In places like Minneapolis, they can do inclusionary zoning. And so if we had inclusionary zoning, we could get rid of parking mandates. But the state legislature has taken that out of your hands. And so our analysis shows that we can increase housing stock all we want, but if we can't do something to incentivize affordability, that doesn't really move the marker. So we would like to keep page 58 as is, and then we'll work through some of that in zoning code, but really keeping affordability, visitability, connectivity, and equity at the center of the plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments, Ms. Davey. Other public comment tonight? Come on up.
My name is Jocelyn Brown, and I am not here with an organization. I live in Missoula. I have children who would love to live in Missoula. We just want to work here and live here because we love it here, like so many other people that come here. But having something that is, this is a great plan, and any plan is an excellent start. There's a lot of areas that seem to be open to manipulation further down the line, and that kind of concerns me. And there's this huge gap between what's happening at the Y and what's happening up at the Rattlesnake and what's at the Fort, that these high density areas that are an issue now, I see becoming an issue when you're just pushing it out into the outskirts of Missoula. And the places that are providing industrial and mixed use are providing a service to the interior of Missoula. So just putting up housing and not allowing for businesses and commercial enterprises and stuff still in those areas, I think is going to end up hurting Missoula, because you were, like the gentleman before me said, you're pushing people who want to work where they live further and further and further apart from each other. So then you have people living down the valley, driving into Missoula to go to work, and it doesn't make it a neighborhood, right? So that's my only comment, is I appreciate the plan, I appreciate the work. I really hope that the things that are kind of ambiguous can be looked at so that they're not open to manipulation by people who have more money or are not from around here or not vested in the community, aren't going to be here to see what it looks like 25 years later. And also just make sure to provide those opportunities for those outlying areas to have mixed use, because those areas are providing services to the interior, and pushing them further and further out just causes the problem we have now with the valley and Missoula and north of Missoula. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Brown. Other public comment in the room? Anybody wish to make public comment in the room tonight?
Good evening. My name's J.W. Troll. I absolutely support this plan. I think it's a great plan because it recognizes and takes an honest look at the scale of the problems that we're facing. And it really asks us to call into question the priorities and choices we need to make in order to solve those problems. And, you know, I like what others have said about this really is a call for community and for us to imagine ways to bring people into housing opportunities that they don't have now. And there's been some discussion about the idea of compatibility, and I think, you know, we should think hard about the vast number of different ways that housing can look and the options there are for housing that are compatible with your neighbors being able to afford housing in the future. And, you know, whether those are neighbors you don't know yet, or they're your friends, they're your family, they're your friends and families, kids, you know, there's the need for housing options and choices is totally compatible with our future and our neighbors' future. And yeah, and I also wanted to address something on parking. You know, I think there's some fear that we're gonna be making some drastic changes to parking. And I think we should recognize that the changes we make that seem lofty and big, and these will take time to change our community. And so we have a lot of parking now. These changes will sort of get incrementally adjust the way our community looks in the ways that are compatible with the people who live here now and will be in the future. And I think it's also important to recognize that parking comes at a huge cost to our housing because it takes up a lot of space and it takes up a lot of resources to maintain that space dedicated to cars, especially when a lot of it goes unused. When you look at statistics of the numbers of households that own vehicles, and especially renter households, the majority own one or fewer vehicles. And so when we're mandating additional parking that goes unused, that's a cost to everyone's housing as we dedicate land to it. But yeah, absolutely support this plan, and thanks everyone for the time that's gone into it, and appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Troll. All right. Ms. Trujillo.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carissa Trujillo. I'm the Executive Director of Homeward. Just adding my quick thanks to you all. Thank you to the city staff for all the efforts that you've made to engage with the community in these conversations, and thank you to the council folks for considering all of this effort. It's really important for us to ensure that our community is welcoming for all of our current residents and those who are yet to come join us, and ensuring that everyone has a safe place that they can call home that they can afford. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Trujillo. Other members of the public, come on up.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for all the work that's gone into this. For me as a layperson, it's been one of the more easy documents to understand what's going on, so I really appreciate that. I came to this process because I am fortunate enough to be a homeowner downtown, and was trying to figure out how to add infill development, what the options were to bring more neighbors into that space. And what it felt like for me was that with setback rules, zoning overlays and everything, what I was encouraged to do was just build a really big house in that spot, just tear it down and build a big house. And so I just wanted to share that for me, some of the elements here about okay, what can we do to bring more people into these parcels, that might be a little bit narrow, that might be in a specific neighborhood, that don't necessarily encourage that sort of large-scale house, but maybe a large-scale apartment building or something else. That's really important to me, because right now it just sort of feels, and I might be wrong about this, but it feels like everything's sort of pushing in that big housing direction, or big house direction. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your comments. All right, other members of the public in the room here. Anybody else wishing to make public comment? All right, I'm going to shift to folks online. Anybody online here? We have Mr. Larson. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Mr. Larson, can you unmute yourself there?
Thanks. Now I can unmute myself. Matt Larson, Ward 3. I think this plan is very ambitious.
And, you know, this is a thing that obviously a lot of effort has gone into, and I applaud the city for doing something, and obviously a lot has been done here in this plan. But I think there are a lot of concerning aspects in regards to it. First, the plan's heavy resilience on infill development risks overburdening existing infrastructure. Upgrades to water and wastewater and transportation systems may not keep at pace with the growth, creating strain on residents and services. Expanding infrastructure to outlying areas is costly. And clear funding mechanisms for these upgrades are not well defined, which basically, you know, we all know what that means. Secondly, housing affordability remains a significant challenge here. While this aims to address the current deficit and future needs, it lacks strong enforcement tools to ensure affordability, and without mandatory inclusionary zoning or clear incentives, there's risk that the new developments will prioritize market rate housing and exacerbate affordability issues and displacement. Environmental protections are another concern. Balancing growth with preservation of sensitive lands. We've seen that with the infill and filling in of all the wetlands near 39th and Russell, behind Patty Creek Market. You know, those might be next. And we just questioning what the logic is here. We know what can happen here, and also there's all the fire-prone areas that are being developed, and just like the infill of the Reserve Street area in general, I think is a massive concern when it comes to EMS. And, you know, rattlesnake, and it's just going to exacerbate gentrification, and that's an equity issue too. Like the north side, infill is hitting the East Missoula area like nobody's business. So this plan is just probably going to speed that up. So in summary, it just seems like we're getting more of the same here with this plan, without some better defined enforcement mechanisms and some more work. But thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. All right, next public comment online is Stephanie. Stephanie, hopefully you can unmute there.
Yes. So I do want to say that I appreciate that you guys are coming to the East Missoula Community Council meeting tomorrow. I'll reserve some of my more specific questions for then. But cautionary tale from East Missoula. I do have a really big concern, which I have not heard brought up yet. And it's with the part of the presentation where it said that these types of neighborhood designations will bring mixed use with businesses and community centers. And I've participated in countless planning meetings for the East Missoula developments. I mean, I've been to all of them. And we've been told numerous times, time and again, well, that's not profitable. We don't have, you know, nobody wants to build a restaurant space or, you know, a grocery store. That's just not profitable. We need to maximize our, you know, our profit. So development, city centers and neighborhood centers, they don't happen organically. And I understand the concept. You know, we've asked for that for years, and all we've seen is our land just disappearing and being gobbled up, and we get apartment complex after apartment complex. Without some kind of mandate, you're not going to get any development that's not housing. And this is so focused on housing. In the end, we're just going to have acres and acres of apartment complexes. With such an intense focus on housing, it's going to just concentrate businesses in places like Reserve Street Small businesses will suffer, neighborhoods will suffer. I don't know that I've met anybody, and I've lived in East Missoula for 20 years, anybody in the new apartment complexes. They just don't stay in East Missoula. They go into town. And I'm afraid that's kind of what we're encouraging, is the Walmarts and the Targets and the Reserve Street businesses and fast food restaurants, and not really encouraging neighborhoods. So that's always been my problem with this intense housing focus. And that's what I have to say. Thank you. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Thank you, Stephanie. Glad you'll be participating. All right, next public comment online is Max Wolf. Mr. Wolf, how you doing unmuting on your side there? Give you another second here in case you're trying to unmute. If not, I want to make sure you know there's an opportunity to public comment 2 more times at different meetings, one this coming Wednesday, the 11th of December, and then the following Monday, December 16th. Okay. Anybody else online wishing to make public comment? Okay. Not seeing anyone, and not seeing that Mr. Wolf is able to, oh, I got one more here. Heather McMillan, go right ahead. Just have to unmute from your
Okay, yes, thank you. My apologies, I had a problem unmuting. My name is Heather McMillan. I am the Project Development Director at Homeward, and I also live in the Franklin to Fort neighborhood. I also, for full disclosure, was on the advisory committee and worked the last 2 years on this plan. I would like to say, first off, I have to applaud staff, Ben, Madison, Emily, and countless others had me counting beans, drawing sketches, entertaining myself at community meetings in my neighborhood, as well as at the community at large. So this was not a small effort, and I appreciate the hard work that's gone into it. What I do want to say is growth is inevitable, and that is not something that we can control, but how we grow matters. This land use plan is the building block in which we will use to build our building codes moving forward, our not the building code, but the next details in which how things are built in the building form, housing types, and density in neighborhoods, but doing it in a way in which we're too limited to now. And so I've spent my career, I'm an architect, but I spent my career dealing with housing and being concerned about affordability. And I feel this plan is the first time in the past 20 some years I've been in Missoula in which we have a code potential to allow different housing types for various incomes and various results for neighborhoods. And so again, I'm going to reiterate that growth is inevitable, and this is a great plan and a great building block and a start to which we can start really addressing the need that's already here. So thank you for your efforts, and I encourage you guys to approve this plan. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. McMillan. Other members of the public wishing to make comment online? Mr. Wolf, you're back. Are you able to unmute?
There it goes.
There we go.
Can you hear me? Perfect.
Yep.
Good evening, Mayor Davis and members of the council. My name is Max Wolf, and I'm one of the owners of the Old Post Hospital in Fort Missoula. The Old Post Hospital is unique not only as a piece of history, but as one of the few tax-paying properties in the Fort Missoula area. Unlike the surrounding tax-exempt properties, this site actively supports our community's tax base and deserves equitable treatment in its zoning. Originally, this plan designated our private property as open space. It has since been changed to the civic place type. Rezoning the property to urban mixed-use low will align it with other private properties nearby, like Community Hospital and Trail West Bank, and enable redevelopment that meets critical needs. Workers at the fort have expressed a strong desire for daycare, community spaces, and other services. This property can provide those amenities while contributing to Missoula's broader goals of increasing housing availability and access. Fort Missoula's history is important, but its future depends on adaptive growth. Rezoning this property is a step towards balancing preservation with the development our city needs. I also want to add that the Missoula Country Club has part of its property in mixed-use low, with another portion being zoned civic place type, with no public benefit or easement on it. It should all be one place type, mixed-use low. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Wolf. Next public comment online, Danny. I just lost your hand. Danny, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you
Great.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Davis. I just wanted to echo mainly the comments that were provided by other folks, including Heather McMillan most recently. I think this is a great plan that will help put Missoula on the right direction in terms of planning for future growth that is coming, whether we like it or not. I also agree with other folks who mentioned the last bullet point on page 58. I think there's a lot of folks in the room who have a lot of different opinions on Missoula's parking situation and ways it can be improved with modifications to Missoula's parking regulations. The change that I think would be best would just be to make it the last bullet point on page 58 less prescriptive and more open-ended, so that ensures that the discussion, sorry, I'm in the airport right now, that the discussion that happens when we're putting together the Universal Development Code and subdivision regulations in the spring can be robust and include a wide variety of options. I think this has been a long process putting together this land use plan, and I think it would be best to keep those options open as we go into the more specific phase of the plan. Other than that, just the only thing I want to emphasize is that with the new Land Use and Planning Act, like cities across Montana really are obligated at this point to come up with a number to project the future growth, and then to adopt a land use plan and zoning regulations that actually allow for the housing necessary to accommodate that growth. And so just really encouraging the city to adopt this plan, city council to adopt this plan, and take those numbers seriously, because the growth is coming again, whether we like it or not. The population growth is coming, and it'll be so much more a livable community, Missoula, if we actually plan for that growth properly. Other than that, thanks so much, and thanks for the really robust community engagement process with this plan over the past few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks for joining us from the airport while you're traveling. We appreciate you making time for this. Are there any other members of the public online that wish to make public comment tonight? I'm not seeing any hands raised. All right. So that wraps up our public comment, and we'll bring it back to council comment. Before I do that, I just want to thank the community for your thoughtful comments, for opportunities for consideration for this plan, and for your recognition of the hard work of our staff. That makes me feel very good as the mayor, knowing just how much effort this staff has and continues to put into this plan. It's been an extraordinary lift. It will continue to be so as we shift from the land use plan into the development code. And we need your voices out there to help the rest of the public that might not be as familiar or tuned in to this. I mean, I think as Jana pointed out, there's a lot of people that still don't really know what's going on, despite how robust our community engagement efforts have been. And I would just ask that you partner with us in helping invite people to the process, ensuring that they know this is happening. And again, thank you for recognizing the efforts of our staff at the City of Missoula. I certainly am proud of the work that they've done to get us to this point. Okay, thank you. With that, I'd like to turn it back to City Council comments.
I have a question.
Please.
I thought we were going to comment on next week comments.
Oh, we're not even commenting. Oh, after when?
Yeah.
When we need the motion.
We need a
Thanks.
motion, and yeah.
Oh, okay. That shortens our meeting. Thank you for checking me on that procedural piece. Appreciate that. Great. So no council comments. We can shift right then to land use plan Planning Chair, Councilor Nugent.
I mean, in theory, if anybody had more questions, we could certainly take those, but I think we would hold on comments until next week. But I'm not seeing anybody jumping up, so I'm just going to take this opportunity to read a motion here. Oh, Bob has a question.
All right, Bob.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I just put my hand up. You're saying so. Sorry. I guess I have to ask, because I did not understand fully the subtlety of the change that was made in the neighborhood greenway section.
Ben, would you mind putting that on screen?
Yeah, the page one, come on, 101 deal. So obviously there's some consternation about the last part of that with the adding regional parks and shopping centers clause with that. I'm just wondering practically with the operative word in that bullet point being may, and it's not a shall, it's not a will, it's a may. I'm just wondering from that standpoint, if we're just talking semantics as far as having that extra clause in there, or what was the rationale behind having it worded that particular way?
Do you want to have a member of staff take that? And or Ms. Davey from Common Good is here to also add to the public comment, but I'll turn it to staff first.
Mike? Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think our thinking is that this was a suggestion that we received, as you can tell, something that folks are honing in on, and so we agree with that. This just was not intending to preclude those types of additional treatments from places beyond what's listed in, in this phrase. And I think that's the effort here, is to clarify that. But if, Lisa, if you wanted to respond to that too, that'd be great.
Thanks, Ben and Mayor Davis, for letting me address this. So Councilman Campbell, the very specific reason we asked to change this is as we're working on the Neighborways campaign with Greenways, we were really looking at how these road types were described. And Ben, not this Ben, Ben Weiss and Aaron Wilson had told us that they had actually worked Neighborways into the future land use street types. And so when we looked, it does say may have dedicated separate facilities, and we think that's where it should end. So it says may, it doesn't say shall. I think that's a really good point. But if it reads may have dedicated separate facilities when passing particularly busy destinations, we were concerned that would create a thing where we just had like a lane right by the park, but the rest of the greenway didn't have a separate facility on the ones that we would like to see bikes, pedestrians, wheelchairs separated from automobiles. Does that help? Great.
Thank you very much, Ms. Davey. I want to make sure, Councilor Campbell, you know exactly the spot. Do you know I just want to make sure we're clear about that. Okay, great. Councilor Jordan.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a new question based on some public comment from Mr. Max Wolf, who's one of the owners of the Old Post Hospital. And I'm curious, I hadn't thought about this, where this new zone type is limiting his ability to use the land from where it currently sits. He was hoping to put some residents on there, and I know that that's a really controversial issue, and I don't really want to talk about that specifically right now, but this particular designation is going to limit how this fellow can use his land, and I'm wondering what the explanation behind that is.
Yeah, so just to clarify, residential isn't a primary use in the civic place type, but it is an allowable use and is something that could be built there. The place type in and of itself won't restrict anything in terms of development. That will be further defined through our regulations, through the zoning districts and through code. And so that's where we would really take a look at the parcel. We would look at the historic overlay and the components there, and we would really work to kind of calibrate a zoning district that took all of that into account.
to follow up?
Sure, you bet.
Sorry, just to make sure I understand, you're saying that the civic designation doesn't preclude him from building houses there in the future? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Correct. It's not a primary use in the civic category, but it's not precluded.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Thanks for that clarifying question. And any other clarifying questions from council members tonight? Okay. Not seeing any, then Councilor Nugent, I'll turn it back over to you to make the motion, and we'll close out this public hearing, and we'll send this back to committee.
All right, thank you, Mayor Davis. I move City Council adopt a resolution to adopt the Missoula 2045 Land Use Plan and Place Type Map, Attachment 2 and Exhibit A, as Missoula's new governing land use plan based on the information and considerations in the staff report. Through this action, the City of Missoula is repealing the Missoula City Growth Policy 2035, the associated future land use map, and repealing all existing neighborhood plans developed prior to the adoption of the 2045 land use plan, except the 2023 Missoula Midtown Master Plan, the 2020 Tepkin Master Plan, and the 2019 Missoula Downtown Master Plan, which shall remain effective and controlling and adopted as area plans under the 2045 land use plan, with consideration of the public comments submitted to the City Council and as recommended by the Planning Board. And I move we send this back to committee.
Great. So we have a motion to send this back to committee. Do we need a vote for that?
I think without objection.
Without objection. Okay. Any objection to sending this back to committee for this Wednesday, December 11th? Not seeing any objection here or any online. Okay, thank you very much. Then this item will be back on the City Council committee. That is the Land Use Planning Committee, and this committee will start at 1 p.m. for this agenda item. And again, it'll be back on Council's agenda for Monday, December 16th for consideration. So thank you very much, everybody. That does wrap up our item. Again, thank you for staff for your thorough presentation and also availability for questions. Very helpful. If it's all right with folks, I'd like to go ahead and just give us a 10-minute break before we finish out the rest of the agenda. We will resume this at 8:55. Thank you. All right, I know there's a lot to celebrate, but we have a little bit more to finish tonight. So come on back. Let's bring this meeting back to order, and we'll finish these couple items. Ms. Redding, just for the record, we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order at 8:55 p.m. Thank you. All right, thanks, folks. Appreciate that break. And we are going to go ahead and get to our next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. And so, Ms. Redding, if you will go ahead and call the consent agenda up on the screen so folks watching online can see it and those in the audience can follow along. And then if you will go ahead and read the consent agenda out loud, we'll go ahead and take a vote on that separately from any of the items in regular business.
Absolutely. Items on the consent agenda. Motion to approve accounts payable claims for checks dated December 10th, 2024 in the amount of $1,381,565.51. Motion to confirm the mayor's reappointment of John Freer to the Impact Fee Advisory Committee as a regular member for a new term beginning December 1st, 2024 and expiring November 30th, 2028. Motion to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Hank Trotter to the Impact Fee Advisory Committee as a regular member for a new term beginning December 1st, 2024 and expiring November 30th, 2028. Motion to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Nick Kaufman to the Impact Fee Advisory Committee as a development community representative for a new term beginning December 1st, 2024 and expiring November 30th, 2028. Motion to reappoint Jennifer Lauren Nielsen to the Missoula Civic Television Advisory Committee as a regular member for a term beginning January 1st, 2025 and ending December 31st, 2028. Motion to approve the memorandum of agreement with Arts Missoula for support of citywide arts and culture programs and efforts and authorize the mayor to sign. Motion to approve the donation agreement and accept the gift of 16.14 acres of open space parklands from developer of the West Ends Farms subdivision and authorize the mayor to sign. And motion to approve and authorize the mayor award the bid for the RAS valve replacement project to the Western Municipal Construction at a cost not to exceed $1,126,800.
Excellent. Ms. Redding, thank you very much. Okay, so those are all the items on our consent agenda, and I want to offer the public the opportunity to make public comment on the consent agenda this evening. Any public comment on the consent agenda? I'm not seeing any in the room. How about online? I'm not seeing any online either. Do any council members wish to separate any items on the consent agenda? Not seeing any. Then we can do a voice vote on this. Ms. Redding, you can do a voice vote on the consent agenda, please.
All in favor for items on the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All opposed? Consent agenda passes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I want to take a couple of moments. The items under regular business are both under the Public Works and Mobility Committee. And before I hand it over to Chair Becerra, I just wanted to speak for a bit about why these are on the committee reports. I asked for this, and the reason being is that because we had a robust discussion at the Public Works Committee, and these two items are somewhat they are very interrelated, and they might not make a lot of sense for one's an up and one's a down. I wanted to give some perspective on why I am recommending that we continue forward to pause the Eaton Street Phase 2 sidewalks. I expressed that during the committee, and several council agreed with that. And I know this is not an easy discussion. First of all, I just want to commend the staff for continuing to do the work that has been requested by both council and the administration to find creative ways to continue to finance sidewalks. We're at a point in our community, I think, in terms of just where there has been significant amount of cost burden across so many different areas and so many questions about how it is that we are continuing with these assessments. It feels like it's appropriate to pause. We're just about to lean into development code rewrite, where we're going to be contemplating quite a few development codes that relate to street types and other things. And given all of that, it feels prudent to pause on the Eaton Street Phase 2 project, as well as future sidewalk assessment projects for the time being. I don't think it's a priority. I do want to see Public Works being able to get through some other work this year, but I do want to make sure that this is a priority for us going forward and how we think about this for our budget season. And then with that, there's still the consideration on here, which was a unanimous vote by committee to support the ordinances amending municipal codes Title 3 and 12. And this expands subsidy for our sidewalk deferment program. So even though I just said I would recommend that we pause Eaton Street and our other sidewalks for the time being, there are two projects that have not been bonded yet, and that is Turner Street and that is Franklin and Ivy Street. And this, passing this ordinance would allow for a greater number of Missoulians to benefit from our sidewalk deferment program. And given that we haven't bonded for two projects and they've been built within recent times where obviously these inflationary impacts are impacting Missoulians, we could benefit more Missoulians by passing this ordinance tonight. So it's my recommendation that we do that, and I feel like these two items are connected, yet still separate, and so I wanted to make those comments before handing it to Councillor Becerra. So whenever you're ready, Councillor Becerra, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. So the first motion is we do not approve and authorize the mayor to sign the resolution to order right-of-way improvements project 22-028 Eaton Street Phase 2, South 13th Street West to West Sussex Avenue. So a do not pass means that if we vote, we need to vote yes to not pass it.
Thank you for that. Correct? I think it is. Yeah. We're getting the head nod from Councillor Anderson. Thank you for that. It's confusing.
Exactly.
We're confirming the no vote. Okay. Right. So any other council comment or anything like that before we take a vote? Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, thanks. I just have a general comment that while I have been pushing for infrastructure improvements in my ward, I really would rather see that we get at least one side of all of our busy streets with a sidewalk before we start putting two sidewalks or a sidewalk on either side of a busy street, just because the connectivity is so poor in Ward 6. And so I just wanted to clear the record that, yes, I definitely want the infrastructure, but I would rather see us focus on ensuring that we have one sidewalk on one side of the road before we do a sidewalk on either side of the road. And I just wanted to clarify that point because it was brought up last week. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. And certainly that is definitely something I think we continue to bring that concept. We should bring that concept back to the drawing table. Yeah, absolutely. Any other council comments before we take a vote on this? All right, not seeing any and not seeing any online. Then, Ms. Redding, we'll take a roll call vote on item 9.1.GB, please.
Perfect. And just to confirm, a yes vote means that you do not want to move forward with this resolution. We're taking a vote on a motion, a recommended do not pass, to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the resolution to order right-of-way improvements project 22-028 Eaton Street Phase 2, South 13th Street West to West Sussex Avenue. Stacie Anderson?
No.
Mirtha Becerra?
No.
Bob Campbell?
No.
Daniel Carlino?
Yes.
Sierra Farmer?
No.
Gwen Jones?
No.
Kirsten Jordan?
Yes.
Eric Melson,
No.
Mike Nugent,
Yes.
Jennifer Savage,
Yes.
Amber Sherrill,
No.
Sandra Vasecka.
Yes.
The recommend do not pass does not pass.
Well done, Ms. Redding, for tracking that complexity. Okay, so the recommendation to do not pass does not pass, which means that the council votes to authorize Eaton Street project sidewalk to move forward. All right, thank you for that clarification. I'm getting nodding heads. All right, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item.
All right. This is recommended. The recommended motion is to set a public hearing on January 6, 2025, and preliminarily approve ordinances amending Missoula Municipal Code, Title 3 entitled Revenue and Finance, Title 12 entitled Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places, to update the sidewalk deferral program eligibility requirements to be effective on February 5th of 2025.
All right. Recommendation is on the floor, and looking around, I don't know if we have any council questions before we take a vote. Okay, no. Mr. Carlino.
Can I comment?
Sure, please, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like that last vote deserved a discussion if we were going to flip-flop on the people that are going to have to pay thousands of dollars for that sidewalk. Like, they came into council and we kind of gave them false hope to change that decision without even explaining why. I feel like it wasn't right. I feel like we should at least try and explain that, because otherwise they would have been here today if they thought that they were going to get stuck with those thousands of dollars of costs. But moving forward, I think this deferral option is a great idea. And I just want to reiterate, if people have to finance the $9,000 over 20 years, that actually ends up being $17,000. And also, we could add more money towards the sidewalks and still build the same amount, and pass a resolution to make it to where we're not charging individual homeowners thousands of dollars. So we have the power to change these things in the future, but I just think the neighbors that came the last two committee meetings would have came today if they were under the impression that something would have changed. So I think that is a little bit frustrating.
Councilor Anderson. Oh, there were some other folks, but go right ahead, Councilor.
I can queue up in the...
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. And Councilor Vasecka, I saw your hand was raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to second what my colleague, Councilor Carlino, said. But then I saw other hands come up because I was going to ask that those who did flip-flop on their vote, I would like to hear why on the previous vote, because it took me by surprise, and it'll take the people who will have to shell out thousands of dollars by surprise too. So I just wanted to share my 2 cents. Thanks.
All right, you bet. Councilor Sherrill?
I'm just wondering what our tools are for. I agree with what's being said. It's kind of to change it now feels like, and I didn't change my vote, but it does feel like that's a difficult situation for the neighbors that weren't able to come in and comment. So I mean, I guess is it done? I mean, like, we can't do anything about it at this point? I mean, what are I mean, I guess I'm asking.
Well, the vote's been taken, but yeah, we'll just check a quick parliamentarian check and I'll get back to you, Councilor Campbell. Councilor Anderson?
I think, it depends on which side. I think there could be made a motion to reconsider by somebody who was in the winning side. So those of us who voted no to overturn the decision to not pass, one of us could make a motion to reconsider. And then it would come back on the floor. I mean, you know, it is kind of it's a done deal, but that could happen still within the meeting at the discretion of the chair. So basically it would be a motion made by one of us who voted no to say, I would like, Madam Chair, point of order, make a motion to reconsider, and you can decide whether that is in order or not.
Okay.
Can we get the vote count and who voted what? Because if, I'm just curious, who thinks they changed their vote? Who changed their vote?
I changed my vote.
Councilor Campbell.
And I did not intend to do that. I didn't know that this was going to be the ultimate result.
Oh.
I mean, I'll just put it out there. I voted incorrectly.
So Councilor Campbell, Councilor Melson, I believe the two of you.
You make the motion then.
Motion reconsider.
All right, so there's a motion to reconsider the vote on the floor. Can I ask if anybody has any concerns with that, or do we need to take a vote on that?
It's point of order.
It's just my point of order, so I can make the decision.
Point of order. I think we need to look it up in our rules because I think it might need to be a week later at the next follow-up meeting by some. But I think we should take a heartbeat here and look at our rules and do it the right way.
All right, I like that. Let's do that. Pausing before I ask.
Could we also get the vote count and see who voted what? Because I think maybe some people think they voted one way and voted another.
You bet. We can do that, absolutely. So the request, Ms. Redding, is that you put the vote count on the screen just so we have clarity about who voted yes to do not pass and who voted no to do not pass on item 9.1GB.
Absolutely. I'll just need a moment to get that up on the screen.
Not a problem.
I voted no. You voted no, but it was a do not pass. Right. So a no means a yes. So you want it to pass. So you don't want it to pass, right? You did vote to pass. Okay, so what is the vote count? It's Bob and Eric. Thank you. Okay.
Because we need to.
Griffin, glad to see you over there. Thanks.
So either one of you go. Well, I'm looking up Masons.
Are you finding it in the rules? Because I am not. And it's
I have. You're looking at Masons. I do hear from Mr. Sudbury that he believes the motion to reconsider could happen now or at the next meeting.
Okay.
But we still can take we can still take a breather and review our rules. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick find here.
I mean, Mayor,
reconsider page 8.
Mayor, while they are looking at everything,
okay.
I was going to say, we haven't moved on to the next item yet, and it's not unusual for people to
change their
be
vote.
Asked if they want to change their votes.
Why don't you just
we have moved to the next item.
Call to see if anyone changes their vote before closing this item and going to the next item. I think that's probably the cleanest way.
We did close the item because we presented the next. So I think we can do a motion to reconsider.
I think we need to dispense with the motion that we currently have on the floor, though, and that is to set the public hearing.
So yeah, let's use your mic. So let me read to you Rule 19.
Okay.
A motion to reconsider any action may be made at any time before or during the second regular meeting after such action is taken. Such a motion may be made only if it has been regularly placed on the agenda by a council member who voted with the prevailing side in the original vote on the item. Whatever that means. Approval of a motion to reconsider requires 2/3 of those members presenting and voting. The effect of a motion to reconsider means the entire matter is before the body for reconsideration.
Fine. Let's just do that then.
Ms. Sherrill? Councilor Sherrill?
So my recommendation is we take the motion to reconsider right now because I think that we did move on to the next item, but we also did not have an opportunity for people to be asked whether they'd like to change their vote. And normally when we have these weird like vote no if you want yes and yes if you want no, we're normally really clear about that.
Okay.
And so in the event someone would like to change their vote because they accidentally voted the wrong way, which absolutely happens on these yes, no, and no, yes votes. And this is not the first time, Eric, that this has happened. So no shame in doing that and figuring it out. I would suggest that, and I'm happy to move forward tonight with a motion to reconsider for that reason.
Councilor Sherrill, thank you for that clarity. I think, no, I did not ask if anybody wished to change their vote. And if this is all right with, are there any issues from members of the council for us to pause on item 91GC and go back for me to ask if anybody wishes to change their vote? You have to use your mic, please.
Not to be a stickler on the rules, but we should technically vote on the motion to reconsider, and it takes a 2/3 vote of yes, you want to bring the motion back up onto the floor to reconsider.
So yes, will be a reconsideration.
So yes, so the motion has been made by Ms. Sherrill to reconsider the item, and she was on the prevailing side, so she has the right to make the motion to reconsider. Then it takes a 2/3 vote of the people present to bring that motion back onto the motion to reconsider. If you pass it to bring it back on the floor. So it's 2/3 of those of us. So if you want to reconsider it and have opportunities for people to change their vote, you want to vote yes on the motion to reconsider.
Okay.
Mayor.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm reading some clarity from Ryan Sudbury, which I'm going to ask him to provide that that clarity out loud before we continue, but I'll go first to you, Committee Chair Becerra, before I ask.
I just want to make sure that I would prefer that we dispense with the motion that we currently have on the floor and then go back to the previous item and do all the different motions that we need to do in order to get the change votes. So we currently have a motion on the floor on item 9.1GC for setting the public hearing for the ordinance change. So it would be my preference that we dispense with that and then we go back and deal with the previous one.
Okay, that seems acceptable. Does anybody have any challenge with that? So we can dispense with this item and, okay, great. So for clarity for the minutes, we are going to move forward with the item that's currently under consideration, Ms. Redding, which is 91GC, and that is the recommended motion to set a public hearing on January 6th for the ordinance changes. Everybody clear where we are?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And a yes vote means a yes.
And that's helpful too.
Do a voice vote.
Yes, this motion is a motion to set a public hearing on January 6th, 2025, and preliminary approved ordinances amending Missoula Municipal Code Title 3, entitled Revenue and Finance, Title 12, entitled Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places, to update the sidewalk deferral program eligibility requirements to be effective on February 5th, 2025. Stacie Anderson?
Yes.
Mirtha Becerra?
Yes.
Bob Campbell?
Yes.
Daniel Carlino?
Yes.
Sierra Farmer?
Yes.
Gwen Jones?
Yes.
Kirsten Jordan?
Yes.
Eric Melson?
Yes.
Mike Nugent?
Yes.
Jennifer Savage?
Yes.
Amber Sherrill?
Yes.
And Sandra Vasecka?
Yes.
The motion on that item passes unanimously.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to move us back to item 9.1GB. And before I do that, did you have a comment before I move back to that item?
No, I was just, we're going to vote on the motion to reconsider, which needs a 2/3 vote to pass.
A motion to reconsider, and I'm going to have Ryan Sudbury speak to it. Mr. Nugent.
Councilor
Nugent.
I would put out there that I think Mr. Carlino is correct, and I also think that a mistake was made and we noticed it almost immediately, and if this motion to reconsider fails, this is why people hate government, and we should just go fix the votes. Like, we are spending all this time on something that's ridiculous. We know what the council wants the outcome to be. We should just go fix it. But that's just my opinion.
I can appreciate that. I'm looking around the room. Mr. Sudbury, please come off mute and join us for this conversation.
Yeah. So, I heard you read Rule 19, and that's accurate. The issue there is that it's anticipating that the meeting is over, that somebody wants to move to reconsider something that was decided. And so the important element there is that the item needs to be on the agenda. The public needs to know that this item is going to be discussed again. This item is on the agenda, and as I think Mr. Nugent keenly pointed out, council figures out an error at a meeting. You shouldn't have to wait to the next meeting to fix it. You can do it at this meeting. It takes two-thirds of the people there to take it back up. That's just the standard sort of parliamentary rule for a motion to reconsider. And if it gets brought back to the floor for a decision, then it only takes a majority of those of the people voting to actually make a final decision on it. So that's the one wrinkle there.
So for clarification, because it's on the agenda tonight, do we still need 2/3 to bring back the item for vote?
Yeah, I mean, that's the standard element. The item has been decided. You know, you can have people quibble whether things were decided wrongly, and that's why there's the element, the avenue to bring it back up. But the parliamentary rule still stands that you need to have the requisite vote to bring it back up and to have yet another vote.
Okay, thank you very much. President Sherrill?
Yeah, I just, thanks for that clarification, Ryan. And, you know, I voted the same way that I voted last time, and I plan on doing that again when we vote on this. But I do, I think Mr. Carlino makes a point, and I think others, I brought the motion to reconsider because I don't want to, I don't think people should be, if you voted the wrong way and you want to change your vote, maybe the outcome's going to be exactly the same when we go back to the vote, but it seems like it might not be, at least with some people. So I think that we need to give everyone the opportunity. So I honestly, because, and Mr. Nugent said it gets kind of ridiculous, but we made there was a mistake made here. Let's fix it. I hope all of us vote yes on the motion to reconsider, and let's move this forward.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a motion to reconsider on the floor. Do I need to take public comment on that? No, I don't think there's any. It's procedural. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and take a roll call vote on the motion to reconsider. Ms. Redding.
Okay, this is a motion to reconsider the previous do not pass motion. Beginning with Stacie Anderson.
Yes.
Mirtha Becerra.
Yes.
Bob Campbell.
Yes.
Daniel Carlino.
Yes.
Sierra Farmer.
Yes.
Gwen Jones.
Yes.
Kirsten Jordan.
Yes.
Eric Melson.
Yes.
Mike Nugent.
Yes.
Jennifer Savage.
Yes.
Amber Sherrill.
Yes.
And Sandra Vasecka.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. That motion is ready to be reconsidered.
Excellent, thank you. I just want to point out just how flexible and understanding local government can be. I also want to point out that beers are on Councillor Campbell and Councillor Melson. Okay, we're going back to consideration here. This item is back up for consideration. So, Councillor Becerra, I'll look to you for making a motion again, if that's okay.
All right, so the motion is to not approve and authorize the mayor to sign the resolution to order right-of-way improvements projects 22-028 Eaton Street Phase 2, South 13th Street West to West Sussex Avenue.
Okay, so
a yes vote means you're reaffirming that do not pass.
All right. And any other questions before we take a vote?
I have a comment.
I'm sorry?
My
oh,
hand.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Yes, Councillor Anderson, please.
Actually, Mr. Nugent has his hand up.
I just appreciate that you all are flexible.
We are a nation of laws. I did not change my vote. I'm going to continue to vote. am empathetic to the requests of the neighbors, but I also understand that things are not getting cheaper anytime soon. We've seen the cost of asphalt and concrete go up exponentially, and we need to continue to make incremental steps towards infrastructure for the entirety of the community. And I am happy that we all previously voted to change the math equations so that the most anybody has to finance is the $3,500, because we've lowered the amount. For any reason, you can defer any amount beyond that. So it's only if you want to not have the deferral, you would then pay the full amount. But there are options, and we've expanded those options. And, you know, for those folks who are living on a fixed income, we have expanded what the AMI requirements are. So if you are truly living on just Social Security, you do qualify for a low income deferral. And I think the city is pretty good at working with folks to make sure that they walk through all the things that they are qualified for. So, so I will be voting what I do believe will be in the minority to continue to move this project forward.
And as an illustration, you'll be voting no.
No.
Correct. I just want to make sure
Correct. I will be voting no.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Councillor Jordan, thank you for your comments. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to reiterate my comments that we need iterative infrastructure in places where we have no sidewalks. We don't need sidewalks across the street from other sidewalks. And to defer a loan, as Mr. Carlino very poignantly pointed out, means that people are paying almost twice as much than they would have if they had the money, or if we just had the city pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other council comments before we take a roll call vote? Councillor Jones.
I just want to point out that with what we just passed, changing the formulas, if people are low income, they can have a deferral of the $9,000, and there is hardly any, I think less than $100 charged in interest over many, many years. So there are some really good options out there. Clearly, this is going to merit some more conversation as it gets harder and harder every year, but there are some really good tools for people who are low income.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any other comments? Councillor Vasecka.
Just for quick clarification sake, we did not pass that change in the deferring program. We just passed to set a public hearing to pass that in the future. So just wanted to clarify that for the public.
Thank you very much for that clarification. That's right. You passed a motion to set that public hearing for January 6th, 2025. Thank you for that. All right, Councilor Anderson, your hand is still raised, but I think
that is
you're
unintentional.
All right, thank you. I think that wraps up all of our council comments then, and we can go to a roll call vote. Okay, be prepared, everybody.
Right.
All right, once again, we are voting on a motion to not pass an approval and authorization for the mayor to sign the resolution to order right-of-way improvements for project 22-028 Eaton Street, Phase 2, South 13th Street West to West Sussex Avenue. Again, a vote yes means that you are voting to not move forward with this resolution and are affirming the do not pass. Beginning with Stacie Anderson.
No.
Mirtha Becerra.
No.
Bob Campbell.
Yes.
Daniel Carlino.
Yes.
Sierra Farmer.
No.
Gwen Jones.
No.
Kirsten Jordan.
Yes.
Eric Melson.
Yes.
Mike Nugent.
Yes.
Jennifer Savage.
Yes.
Amber Sherrill.
No.
Sandra Vasecka.
Yes.
The do not pass passes.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ms. Redding, and thank you to this council for helping us walk through that. And so we have concluded then, we have dispensed, as it is said, with item 91GB, and also 91GC. So that wraps up our regular business under council business. And so that does bring us to public comment on non-agenda items. Anybody from the public wishing to make public comment on non-agenda items? All right. How about anybody online? Anybody wishing to make comment on non-agenda items? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Then that wraps up our public comment, and just briefly communications from the mayor. I always think I'm going to get to some like super lofty comment by this time, but I realize people are tired and probably ready to go home. I do want to just say though that it's the holiday season and there is a lot of celebrations and joyous occasions, and it's also an opportunity for us to remember that there are a lot of folks out there that don't have connections, and if we can think about how to check on our neighbors or ways that we can think about others at this time, check in on folks, seeing how they're doing. It's just a nice reminder to think that a lot of folks do have a hard time with this time of the year. That said, I will just want to recognize the efforts of the Downtown Missoula Partnership. The Holiday on Higgins event was absolutely fabulous again this year. There were thousands of Missoulians that filled the streets. We had so many vendors out there. The festivities were just awesome. There was caroling, there was music. The Missoula Fire Department brought out our large ladder truck for Santa to fly up and light the Christmas tree, which was the holiday tree, which was really excellent. And it was really fun for kids to be able to climb into the cab of that large ladder truck, including myself. It was a lot of fun. So anyway, I just encourage you to go check out that event next year if you haven't already. And I will go ahead and pass it to the person immediately to my right, Councilor Becerra.
I will pass, thank you.
All right, you bet. Councilor Anderson?
Pass as well.
Okay. Councilor Carlino?
Also pass.
Okay. Councilor Melson?
Just a quick apologies to everyone in here. Turns out I'm still a rookie, so thanks for your patience, and happy holidays, everyone.
Nice, thank you. I'll go around the horseshoe here. Councilor Jordan?
I'll pass, thanks.
All right, you bet. Councilor Campbell?
I second Councilperson Melson's comment. Thank you.
And we're in this together. All right, thank you. Councilor Savage?
I'll pass, thanks.
Okay, you bet.
I'll pass.
Okay. Councilor Nugent?
I'll pass.
Okay. Councilor Sherrill. All right. So we've brought around to folks online. Is there anybody online that wishes to make any comment? Councilor Vasecka? Councilor Farmer? No?
I'll pass, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll also pass.
Okay, thanks everybody very much for a very robust and great discussions this evening. I hope everybody continues to have happy holidays, and I'll adjourn at 9:32 p.m. Thank you. Whew. What's that? Yeah, we have one more meeting. Yep. And and it's Ugly Sweater and Ugly Fight Songs night, so.
You never know what to expect.
Oh, gosh. Man.